burning down the city. The ones that are protesting the mayor and the cops and all that kind of stuff. Those people are not white. Some of them, but that's the righteous thing. And then the other people doing the rioting and this, that, and the other, they were all white. And then all the criminals were white.
Well, yeah, okay. You make some pretty valid points here, but first of all, let me say this: you can't be racist.
Down to people. Batman's. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Down to Batman's Thomas Wayne. Literally, don't forget. Like, if you remember, he was almost angelicized in the Christopher Nolan movies. Like, oh, he did so many great. I mean, they alluded to some of the army contracts and stuff. But in general, we put the Wayne Tower in the center of the city, and I work at the hospital. I hate those stiffs. Like they really made Rich Thomas Wayne out to be the angelic philanthropist, so to speak. Whereas in this movie, they do a complete turnaround. They're like, nah, this motherfucker he was
the bad guy.
He was dirty as shit. Alfred was dirty. He's awful.
Here's my Alfred's question. Awful? So these things that you're saying right now,
okay.
I can't refute them. There's no refuting them. But what
did everybody hear all of them, or are they halfway through?
I don't know. I think that they heard halfway through. We're talking about how Batman is racist. The Batman movie is racist. And
yes, the Batman, literally the one that's out right now. Yeah.
Now I have two things that I'd like to throw back at you.
Can you you want to bring them to the ghost court?
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to enter this as Exhibit A. There was a scene where Catwoman is sitting there just laying into all the white leaders of Gotham and how white people are the enemy and white people bad and all that stuff, and how entitled white people and the fat cats and the Capitol, that whole conveation.
Sure,
and then what does she do immediately at the end of that tirade?
Well, if I remember correctly, she asked to get with have Batman team up with her to take them down, right?
Well, she kisses Batman on the mouth, right?
Right, yeah.
So what does that tell you about every single minority who has an axe to grind with, rich white people? Is that given the opportunity, they will sexually enter into a sexual relationship with a entitled elite white person, right?
But wait. The only thing I have to say is, while we, the audience, knew that, technically speaking, and again, this is you could claim this as allowing for some naivete or what have you for the character of Catwoman in this particular episode of the series, or whatever you want to call it. But essentially, she was unawares, which is where the laughter came in on the trailer, if you remember, because she said something along the lines of like, oh, let's go get these rich white fuckers and teach them a lesson or something like that. And of course, there he is just sitting there like,
well, so that's what I'm saying.
So I don't think she knew. Well, the point is your point, while I hear what you're saying from a comedic standpoint, I'm so furious about this topic that it's like, I can't laugh yet, but I have to say instead, they're playing on her ignorance of who he is. So we get to have a little chuckle or be angry or even be able to make an observation like that. But in the movie terms, the truth is she didn't know. So she must have assumed that he was basically a Joker or a Riddler type,
So what about rich? What about the rich black people?
I guess they should have been Batman so she could make out with them or something.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, like, if she's only going after the rich white males or whatever, which is what she says, as I recall in the movie. I have to watch it again. But
I'm like 90% sure she said white outright, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know she says white, and I know she says rich.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I know they're that's like the category. But what about the rich black people? Surely there are some rich black people. But anyways, and my other point that I want to bring to the table is, while they want to shit on white people in this movie, as you've pointed out, and you've made your case that a lot of, the good are all like minorities and women of color and stuff, and then the bad are all white people, which is, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I mean, I recognize that white people are generally bad. We've done some pretty heinous things, right? But
right.
So I mean,
I'm just saying, when it crosses over even to the hero characters, while simultaneously not even having a henchman, not even a henchman. Is the
weren't like the gangs? Weren't they like Hispanic and black, large, like for the
No.
most part? Hold on. I think that some of the remember that scene where he's like fighting them and he says, "I'm vengeance." You know, remember that's a black kid, right, with the half face.
Yeah, that was
It's
that
painted
didn't
white,
want it,
but
that didn't
you know.
want to do it, and all the white guys were the ones he beat up, and then the one black kid got to run away.
Okay, all right, touche. Now here's what I want to bring to the table for real though. Yes. They shit on all the white people, and they have made this argument that all women of color are good people, they're the good guys, and all the villains are white, even though we know Batman is white because we can see half of his face from behind the cowl. You know, we know that he's white, and we know that he's got a lot of really cool shit, so he's probably not poor. I mean, any Catwoman would be able to put that together. But then again, she was living in a rundown apartment with a gay woman, with another woman who she was romantically entangled with. But she's got a bunch of cats, which again is another red flag. But here's my point. Who was the big bad in that movie, right? We have Riddler. He was kind of like the mastermind behind a lot of the chaos, white guy. You know, we have Penguin, white guy, Colin Farrell in a fat suit. We've got that. But they were like, whatever, you know, they were like the, at the time, bad guys. But who's the big bad? Like the long time bad guy, right? It was Morello, or who was the bad, like the guy that killed
you mean Morelli?
Yeah, Morelli. So
yeah,
that's the big bad,
John Turturro,
right? Can we agree that he's the big bad, long time Gotham scourge on the city, like a cancer on the city? I would say he has all the
connections. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What race is he?
In the movie, or John Turturro, or which? I mean,
we know that you can't hide your race. His race is exposed on screen. What race is he?
I thought. Well, first of all, Morelli. If you're asking about the character, I assume is Italian. I mean,
you would think so, but I mean, what race is? We don't even know if maybe Catwoman is actually like, I don't know, maybe she's just like white, dark white, right? Like maybe she's just tan. Who knows? You know, she had like she wore the cultural appropriation of like the long wig and stuff. So like
she did.
She was outwardly like white, but what race is John Turturro?
In real life, or you're asking about the movie? I don't know, actually. I really don't.
He's Jewish.
Oh.
So what does that tell you about?
They're white when they want to be.
What is that? That's the we're talking about undertones and stuff. When they cast a Jewish actor to play the big bad, the cancer of the city, too. I mean, the Italian, the villain, the generally villain. So we could say that, he was the white guy, which is kind of their go-to when like a Jewish guy does something or whatever. They're like, he's a white guy. Well, no, he's a Jew. Right. But if they do something great, then it's, well, he's not a white guy, he's a Jew. So, but we see this cancer on the city is played by John Turturro. I mean, amazing actor, no doubt about it. But he's played by a Jew. So what is that saying? It may be a movie to shit on white people, but largely he's saying that behind the scenes,
it's even further. You're going even deeper.
Behind every bad white guy is an even worse Jew. That's the point of the movie.
If we have to accept one, we have to accept the other, right? But, that brings up even more of a point here. And Tom, you've brought some news to me, and I think we may end up going down a spiral here. Of course, happy Easter and Passover to everybody who celebrates that here in the chat. But I bring that up because, Tom, you're telling me that John Turturro is a Jewish man who played a Hispanic man that was a pedophile named Jesus.
Yeah. No, twice. You know what? I'm saying a lot of hurtful things about John Turturro right now. Well, I don't know why I had this impression that he was a Jew, but I think I was defending the Batman. I don't think he's actually Jewish. It's not in his early life on Wikipedia. So I'll relinquish that. I'll take that back.
Okay.
But I will say that I think largely everybody recognizes that John Turturro is Jewish. And
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, he did just do a movie with Woody Allen, so I guess.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is like, I think, across the board, we all recognize that John Turturro is Jewish. Whether or not he is, he's kind of like our image of Jew, right? So that's my argument.
Woody Allen is my image of a Jew. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know. I'm shitting on Jews and just
You're having
in
a tough
defense
time.
of. So here's what I did, Jerry.
Mhm.
Looking back throughout history, we've seen many times where the Jews were kind of scapegoated, right?
That's true. Sure.
And I just now realized how easy it is to do that. Like, I kind of feel, on this day, 420, right?
Mhm.
April 20th,
Yes.
Adolf Hitler's birthday, I am now realizing just how easy it is to scapegoat the Jews. And as a matter of fact, I mean, even the Romans and the Jews scapegoat the Jews, right? So that when they did so with Jesus. So, and on this, the week after Easter. So I think I've entered into a realm of people who have been scapegoating Jews throughout history. I am the new Adolf Hitler. Like, people will say that. They'll be like, Tom Miller is basically Adolf Hitler, because I thought John Turturro was a Jew, which I still think he might be.
You needed to bring that up to defend to defend the quality of the Batman. It's not even like you were brought it.
You're not going to shit on the Batman.
It's not even like you brought it up because someone died. You know what I mean? Like, oh, John Turturro killed this, he found a girl in a suitcase. Guess who did it? John Turturro. And you'd be like, oh, well, that guy, let me tell you something, what I heard about him. You're just saying, okay, how about this, though? All right, the entire movie has underlying racial tones that are completely racist and uncomfortable. However, did you know that John Turturro's Jewish?
Now I'm going to be on the lookout for any opportunity that I can redeem myself in, like, an actual Jew playing the bad guy in a movie. Like, I'm going to use that. I'd be like, see, they do it all the time. Like, you thought I was being, like, you thought I was out of line by thinking that John Turturro is a Jew. He kind of looks like a Jew, right? It's hard to identify these things. Like, he's never done anything that I thought, well, that was kind of like a Jew move, right? He's never done. We see that all the time, right? But he's never done anything. Yeah. But to look at him, and he's a talented actor, and we can agree that many talented actors are in fact Jewish. There's no denying that.
Yes.
So
and just because he has a particular last name doesn't matter, because they changed it all.
Yeah,
a lot of famous
his real name could have been John Leibowitz, right? Like, who knows?
Turbowitz.
That might be it. Like, there's no way that we would ever know without looking at early life. I need to get, like, on Wikipedia. That's going to be my lifetime achievement. Is I'm gonna like work really hard at becoming a Wikipedia editor, and then I'm going to change John Turturro's early life to indicate that he was born of Jewish parents, and that his real name is John Leibowitz.
You're transitioning.
Yeah. Well,
wow.
I'm always looking for bigger and smaller and more innier penises, right? So do we want to do this joke real quick before we do the shot and the whoopsies? Because I know you want to talk about the 8.2, right?
The 8.2. Oh, the 0.8.
8.2 wiggers. Oh yeah,
yes.
It's 8.8.
Yes,
no, it's 8.2.
I think it's a. No. Remember we said 12.8 or
12.
whatever.
12.8. You're right.
Yeah. So the question was, how to become 0.8 of?
Yeah, of a Jew, right?
I'm a Jew in China.
Well, no, you'd be on the wrong monotheistic Abrahamic religion, because what happened?
Speaking of, by the way, just real quick, I was doing the Jewish reference as we had been talking about them, and using Kyle's Jew on Christmas song from South Park to subtly discuss what we're about to say, Tom, without giving it away.
I was willing to give it away just because I have no I'm not tactful at all.
Yeah, I think this is a good one. Don't let it go.
Okay. Well, let me do my best to not fuck this up. All right. Because you have the funny stuff. My stuff is like, whatever. Mine's okay.
Tom, it's literally called a joke. You have it. It's your joke.
It's our joke collectively. Like, my half is the first half. So, you've got some itty bitty tiny shoes to fill. So what happened was, a friend of mine who watches the show, and he always writes us to complain about how we're wrong about whatever we talk about often. He had sent me a message right before we kicked off, and it was a picture.
Oh no!
It was a screenshot from World News on Reddit, and I'm not going to cast any judgment on him for being a part of that subreddit, but it says it's an article that says respect religious beliefs of Muslims, China tells Sweden. And this is a real article. And then somebody replies, ain't that fucking ironic? And then somebody else says, don't you fucking think? And then it went into this whole Alanis Morissette thing. But yeah, so this whole thing about China telling Sweden to respect the religious beliefs of Muslims, I replied to him saying 12.8 million Uyghur Muslims have entered the chat. And I know we've talked about this in the past, the Uyghur Muslims. But then he, of course, replied, because he's always got to one-up me. This is the kind of people that I hang around with, people who can always one-up me. He goes, well, they're not allowed to be on the internet, so that's impossible. He shut down my joke real quick, like he's the Matumbo, whatever.
That's right. Yeah, Dikembe Mutombo. He put the waving finger in your face.
And he totally did, because I thought I had a pretty good one, the 12.8 million Uyghur Jews.
Of course that's Muslims, a good joke.
Right? But you have a thing that you wanted to talk about, because you misheard me, or you just were ignoring the additional word that I said to make it
Yes, I comedically heard you. Is that a way to do this? I comedically heard you. Yes, my brain did two things. On the one hand, there was the be Tom's friend, right? And that part heard what you said, verbatim. And then other Jerry, the other side of the brain, said, did Tom just say 12.8 Uyghurs are being... And that's where I said, Uyghurs. And we had a good laugh. And then you said, but how do you become... Or no, how did I say it? I said, what's the 0.8 Uyghur? How did we even get to it? But you basically asked me, somehow we ended up on the question.
I said, no, it's 12.8 million. And then
right, because I said 12.8 Uyghurs. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I said, what, 12.8 Uyghurs? And you said, no, 12.8 million. At which point you said, you raised a very good question, which I thought we should pose to the chat. How does one become 0.8, I guess, of a Uyghur? Yeah. And I think, Tom, first, should we define, my question now is, should we define what it takes to be a Uyghur? So therefore at 100%, right? Here's 100%, here are all the attributes. Then we get to go, okay, well, if that was out of 10, right? If 10 means you did all these things, then subtract 2 attributes, and now you're 0.8, right?
So this is somebody who maybe wears their hat a little bit less cockeyed?
Right, they actually don't do the flat bill. They still... Yeah, they fold it up a little bit because
they also wear FUBU jerseys.
Yeah, right.
and jeans.
They wear nothing but Sean John and FUBU.
Yeah, and their Timberlands.
Their Timberlands without tying their shoes, very open.
But the farmer's bill kind of curve on the hat. Okay.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
Or they wear
they do all that, but then have an American flag tattoo.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a good one.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it brings them back into the realm of a normal person, not a
you're like, wait, what? Yeah, what was that?
Or he's driving down the street and he's got his he's got his old 60s Impala on,
right,
and it's got the hydraulics and shit. And he's there with one white guy driving, then the 3 black guys in the car also. And then he rolls down the window and somebody's on the side of the road. And, they see, all the smoke billows out or whatever. Dude's got the flat bill. He's got the, he's got the shades, the Kanye West shades on that are kind of just the lines over the shutter.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's got,
they're literally shades.
Yeah, he's got the gold tooth and he's got, the FUBU shirt, or he's got a shirt with Tupac on it or whatever. Like Tweety Bird Tupac, remember those? Where people would wear the gang.
It was Tasmanian Devil as
he's got one of those on.
Or something.
And, and he's maybe got a gun in his hand too. He's really playing it out and he's going up to buy some drugs or whatever. And then as he rolls down the window, all of a sudden you hear I don't know, Katy Perry playing on the radio. And then that would bring you down, right? To the point,
dude,
0.8.
I'm imagining, here's what I'm imagining, right? He's going through a drive-through, and he goes to a really hot spot, where a lot of people hang out, and he rolls down his window, and he's got the whole getup. He's got the bandana before they were made to block us from deadly
COVID,
coof.
yeah.
And then he pulls the bandana down and he opens up the window. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing plain French fries on your menu. Honestly, I love everything else, but my stomach just can't. Is there any way? Do you maybe have onion rings, but are the onions maybe a little less potent in there?
Are they roasted? Are they grilled onions or whatever?
Yeah. I'm on keto. Can you tell me?
Mike says,
you know what I mean?
Or no, I'm sorry. Megabit said 2 first names. So like,
yeah.
So the guy rolls up and he's like, he's doing like a rap battle against, you know how like rappers have to say their name or whatever. And he's like, and I'm Nathan Scott, right? That's when it drops down to the 0.8. That's how they get you.
Oh yeah, dude, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to completely repeat your joke with a different version, but I'm just imagining.
No, please do, because 2 first names is always funny.
No, dude, but it's also, it's your other one. Like, I'm imagining him, like, he's getting served a summons, maybe, something, or maybe the cops are at his door.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that, yeah. And then they knock on his door, and he opens it up, and he's watching old Office episodes on Peacock. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's...
No, hold on. I got one, too. He's in all the garb, right? The gold tooth, the flat bill, and he's got like the tattoo on his neck or whatever. And very like Wigger, the way you would imagine, right? The sleeveless tank, the hat's on sideways, his tank says, fuck the police or Black Lives Matter or something. And he walks
NWA.
into this building. Yeah, and he like throws open the door of this building and he strolls in and all of a sudden he comes up to the counter and he says, "Yo, I'm here to pay this fucking traffic ticket." Right? Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my God. So good, right? Like, okay, so
0.8 Wigger.
Dude, just 0.8 Wigger. That's
Wigger.
what it is. Yeah. Dude, look, all right, imagine
show.
Again.
I would watch that show.
Dude, this same, and you just put him in all these wrong places, right? Like, okay, again, he's brandishing huge gold teeth, the whole rest of it, the whole 9, right? Basically, you're watching a white guy, Jamie Kennedy in anything, first of all.
Right.
Secondly, he's dressed even more like Marlon Wayans from Don't Be a Menace, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, with the dreadlocks that are like...
the 3, and, right? But then he gets out of his car and walks directly into the farmer's market with his own bag. He's concerned with the environment. Something that black people typically aren't.
Can I say this before we move on, Jerry? Because this is a gold mine. I think we could do this all night, but honestly, we do have stuff that we have to do. But I will say this is the second time in like as many days that you've referenced "Don't Be a Menace to South Central" while drinking in the hood. You mentioned it literally yesterday. You didn't
respond to the video.
Well, because I've seen the movie before. Like you said, when you said it reminds me of that girl from the scene in "Don't Be a Menace,"
the Korean woman.
And I was like, oh yeah, I get it. And then like I put my phone away, and then it buzzed again. I pulled it out, and you had sent me a link to YouTube, and I'm like, all right. And I clicked on it because I don't ever click on links from YouTube since I've started using YouTube Advanced. Because if you click on the link, it sends you to regular YouTube, and then you've got to watch a trailer or whatever. And sometimes people send me jokes that aren't funny, right? So then I have to watch an ad in order to see what's going on. And or sometimes somebody and V, I love him, but he sends me these trailers for movies, and I have to watch an ad before I watch the ad.
Oh yeah.
So it's like that joke where they say eventually YouTube is just going to be like all it's going to be is just ads, and like everyone, it'll start with the video that you came in, and you're like, I'm here for the ads, man. But I pulled it open and I was like, oh, it's the scene that he was talking about. So I put my phone back away. I'm like, I'm not going to address this. He made the joke. I chuckled, and then he tried to like tell the joke again. I'm like, no, you don't get 2 chuckles.
Well, I guess the worst part is that you did. I guess I have to apologize because I made the unfortunate and offensive assumption that you hadn't seen it.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean?
What does it do? He's like, are we gonna have a problem? He's got like the rocket launcher or whatever. I've seen it.
A problem.
Yeah, that's what it is. And my favorite part of that movie is the racist cop when he's like, I hate the back of Oprah Winfrey's neck because it's black. I hate my
Dude,
gums.
I hate my gums because they black.
Yeah, that's
Dude,
my favorite part, the racist
I
cop,
love-
because it's
even
like
in that-
it's based
Oh, yeah.
on that movie. What is it, Boys
Boys in the Hood.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like it's not even really that much of a parody. Like that's kind
No.
of what like it's very
No, it
like
is not.
laterally transfers like that. So
Yeah, well, that's what made it so, like, looking back, you go, oh, you think they're geniuses, right? And I suppose it is a genius idea at the time to say, oh, let's take this, because Boys in the Hood, it was,
Yeah.
I remember at the time, and I don't know about you, Tom, where you went to school and all that, but
yeah, like I was 80% Wigger.
dude, in my school, my social studies teacher, seriously, I believe was a socialist, number one. Number two, showed us, and we're talking about 6th grade, showed us Boys in the Hood in class because someone had suggested it was like a social commentary movie. And he was just like, well, okay, let's talk about that or whatever. And then he played the movie, didn't even shut it down when the sex scenes came on. None of that shit. And then I remember feeling really uncomfortable, I'm like, I don't think I should be watching this in school, right? Like, let alone at all.
You didn't try to like, scoot closer to the chick that you were crushing on, the honey.
Yeah.
Or what do the black people call them? Honeys. Back then.
I think Honeys was. I think it was Honeys. Yeah.
And then it was Shorties for a while, and now Bitches was like it's transgenerational. I think Bitches has worked.
It does go throughout. Yeah. Yeah, but then I literally turned it off, and then someone put on Under the Bridge which is just a song about being hooked on heroin. And I remember that, thinking about all of it, like, again, I'm not trying to be all, we can't, whatever, but I'm just sitting here going, all right, in 6th grade, in a class where someone was being paid to teach me,
you guys watched Boys in the Hood.
Without commentary, I watched Boys in the Hood, including the sex scene, unedited. And then when it was turned off because we ran out of time, we stood waiting for the bell while watching a song sung by a shirtless Anthony Kiedis singing about how he's a heroin addict. And I just remember, and I'm just thinking back going, I was 12.
Yeah.
I was in a public school. I was 12. I mean, dude.
Do you fault your socialist history teacher for the way that you turned out? Jerry?
Entirely no. I would say 80%.
80%? How you turned 0.8? How you turned out?
0.8%, yeah.
Oh, man. Jerry.
Yep, that's it.
I'm
sorry, I had more time with him that day, and that just equated to my whole life. What am I gonna do?
Is Boys in the Hood? Is that the one with Ice Cube's son in it? I'm gonna ask like the question. no, you're thinking of NW or what's that movie? Straight Outta Compton. I'm gonna pick.
Yes.
I'm gonna pick movies that couldn't possibly have been from then. Like, well, is that the one with what's his name? Bogey Humphrey Bogart. Is that one?
Oh,
no,
yeah.
That was Casablanca. You're thinking of.
Yeah. Oh, are you thinking of the one where Jamie Foxx played a blind guy? No. In fact, that was Ray.
Are you thinking of the one with Al Pacino where he's a football coach? No, you're thinking of Any Given Sunday. We're just totally wrong. So Megabit says, did he sit backwards in his chair too? He's asking.
Oh, and try to teach me.
Teacher. Yeah,
if he could only have gotten his gut and cardigan out of the way.
Why is it fat people are always socialists? Is that something that you've noticed also?
It's weird, right? Because you would think with all their starving artists, the typical thing, like, oh, I work barely. I do a lot of organizing, right? That's always, that's usually, oh, what do you do? Well, I mean, I'm not defined by my slave job.
Vocation or whatever,
yeah, I'm not defined by that. But if you must know, and then they say, but my real passion is taking down the patriarchy and organizing. I'm down with Food Not Bombs every Sunday, feeding only the homeless who have drug problems because the other ones could get a job. or whatever. It's, I don't know, something. Yeah, I don't know. I knew. You have to understand. Around here, after a certain age, they all get fat, but that's because those socialists were able to make it through getting some high-paying job with the state. You understand?
They lived through capitalism, right?
Yeah, they managed to get the state job with the taxpayer-funded position and lots of time off. That allowed them to get fat, right? But a lot of the ones I knew, they were, they might as well have been beggars on the street. They would run Food Not Bombs, and it was like, all right, that they are finally eating. Like that was, that was their thing. So I think there's an age, it's like, oh, I'm a 35-year-old socialist. Oh, I finally got a job that pays.
Now I can be a fat ass.
Now I can eat. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, right? She's not a fat person, right? But I did watch a porn. I did watch a porn the other day with her and Joe Biden, right?
Really?
Not because I was trying to watch a porn. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jerry. I know you're like, oh, this motherfucker, he says he doesn't watch porn, but he's over here watching AOC porn. No, it was a video that these things are leaking now, right? From Hunter Biden's laptop. Stuff is leaking now.
Yeah.
And I saw a video of Joe Biden whipping AOC with a belt, and they're both totally naked. Totally naked. No, I think I even shared it in the Discord.
Really? I would have to get tagged in that to believe it. I don't have. For those of you who are in the Discord and can do so right now, go ahead and tag me.
Yeah,
and
somebody
I will
needs
check
to
it out
watch
afterwards.
that. I think I put it in Wendigo Nudes, where it belongs, right? It's the link to a Reddit thing. It was on Reddit, and I'm a part of a couple subreddits that are a little racy, a little inappropriate, and they push the envelope a little bit. I've been suspended from multiple mainstream subreddits for having partaken in these subreddits, and one of them.
Wait. So they just guilty by association kind of thing. They just would delete you.
Yeah.
Really?
One of them that I was with forever. It was me IRL, right? Like it's just kind of like a goofy little meme area, and people would post shit that's like relatable or whatever, or typically not relatable. Is always goofy shit, but like a very popular subreddit, and I always had a lot of fun with it. Always a lot of funny memes came from it, and then all of a sudden one day, because I was part of No New Normal, they went ahead and suspended me from everything, and then they shut down No New Normal too. It was it was a dark time for Reddit. Yeah, Megabit says he's not going in there. He's not going in the Discord.
I see that. Yeah.
No, Megabit is so funny. He and I we send each other like extremely graphic, gory videos or whatever. And he hit me with one the other day of like an Indian, probably on his way to Sirius XM's call center, and he got like just plowed by this train. And what happened when you get hit by a train, right? I don't know if you know this.
No.
When you get by a train, this dude, he turned, because like when it happened, it plays through regular speed the first time, and then the second time it does it in slow motion. But the first time you see it, he gets hit, and he turns into the Muppets, like when they're running away from a scary situation, where they're like,
"Oh no!"
Like, that's what he did.
Because you're on the front.
Yeah,
and then all your appendages are flying in the wind.
Yeah, his body kind of did its own thing, and then his arms and legs were trying to just keep up. But
my goodness.
Yeah, that was the one that he sent me recently. I think he sent me some pretty dark.
So wait. He sent you that.
Mm-hmm. But he won't go and watch. He won't watch.
I'm not even asking him to watch it. I'm just saying, send me the link, because I don't believe
that Joe Biden
that it came from the Hunter Biden tape or laptop. Now listen, if you wanted to tell me, hey, Jerry, there are still yet more Sarah Palin videos leaking from many years ago, and it was just, Lisa Ann being Sarah Palin, well then, all right, LOL, but okay, everybody knows what you're talking about. That's funny. But you're saying it came directly from Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think that needs to look, Tom, we are the fact checker show.
Yeah. We don't post or talk about things unless they've been rigorously past
Right.
the journalistic standard.
That's right. Yeah. So I think, and especially for our, I don't know, fans and contributors, maybe that's a good way to put it, community. I don't know. But I think we have to hold ourselves to the standard, not just you and me, we're keeping each other in check, sure, but everybody slips up. So I think it is the community's duty to go in there and double check the accuracy of your statement.
Yeah, go watch Joe Biden
Right?
whooping on AOC with a belt.
Yeah.
J-Dubs just entered the chat, and if anyone's going to go in there and find it, it's going to be J-Dubs. Yeah, he's got no shame when it comes to pulling up videos of Joe Biden whooping on AOC with a belt, totally naked. It's if you could, J-Dubs, hop into the Discord, and I think it's under Wendigo Nudes. I shared a link to Joe Biden whipping on AOC's naked ass with a belt. Right. And Weaver Spider said, you had me at AOC getting her naked ass whipped by Joe Biden with a belt. And they're all very naked. Like, and believe me, like when I saw Joe Biden walk in, it's because it's kind of blurry. It's somebody filming off the laptop. It's not something that like somebody
not high quality.
Yeah, it's not like this is certainly not something that you would find on like Pornhub or whatever, where people are getting clicked. You're getting paid.
Yeah.
This is something that somebody like sneakily, real quick, took a video of because they knew it was something that needed to be shared on You Had Me at Bigfoot. I assume is what they were thinking when they took that video. But
thinking, who's the most prestigious
the
outlet that we could get this to? And they said, well, WikiLeaks, ever since Julian Assange, I'm sure can't do it. We got to get it
in an Ecuadorian embassy or whatever. But you know what? This is a lot of people I think are going to be a little skeptical of this video. And that's an understatement, right? Because it's the sitting United States sitting president.
AOC.
Joe Biden, the most popular president ever, 12.8 million Uyghur Muslim votes for Joe Biden.
He is literally 0.8 of a president. Everyone.
Yeah, he won fair and square, and most popular, most votes ever of any president.
That's from what I understand.
There's no denying that.
That's just facts, right? If you just double underline facts, that's how it is.
That's what I would do. I would highlight it too. But he went out. You're expecting me to believe that he went out and he whipped a naked AOC's ass.
For America, he did.
Yeah, well, if it came down to it, I know that Joe. I don't have a doubt in my mind that Joe Biden.
Listen, I've read how he treats. I read how he's treated his daughter. I'm pretty sure he would.
That's a different guy. No. He kissed his granddaughter on the lips. I saw your message. Did we get shanked? And I'm like, yeah. As I'm booting everything back up again, I'm like, You can't say things, right? Like you can't say certain things.
I guess.
You get in trouble if you talk about Hunter Biden's laptop.
It must be. But here's the thing. Wait a minute. So if you want to break it down on the show, that's fine. But I'm just sitting here going, well, wait. So YouTube
it's live now, so you can talk about it. It's fine.
Oh, okay. So I'm still all right. The series of events that was on your end, I froze, which means Skype first, right?
Skype went first. Yes.
Skype went first. Okay. So it wasn't even YouTube. That means that if we're playing the game of someone heard something and shut us down, right? Then it starts with Microsoft and Skype, right?
It has to. It's above YouTube or between us and YouTube. You know what I mean? Like it's someone
what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's somebody outside of YouTube, I think, because how it went
down. Because YouTube wouldn't let us be running right now. We've been banned before.
Yeah, that's happened. I mean, and you have a business week to do it.
Right, our 2 business weeks.
Outside, so what happened was you froze while I was talking. I don't remember. I know what we were talking about. We can't say it again because we'll get taken down again. But
Right.
you froze in this pose. Like I wanted to take I should have taken a screenshot or something. But you were doing this. You were like, I see your face doing this, which was like almost enough to where I'm like, he's being funny. He's like thinking about something, or he's being whatever. But then I realized I'm like, this has been like several minutes that he's been like this. So I should maybe, or several seconds. I mean, it had been about 10, 15 seconds or whatever. But then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it ended the stream. Like all of a sudden it said, like, instead of having the red end stream thing, it said connect or whatever. So then OBS shut down. And then as I went to move down to like click it or change the thing to see what would happen with your face, like if it would change or whatever, as soon as I went to do that, my mouse stopped moving and my face stopped moving on the camera. So I'm like, huh. So then it was frozen, and I'm like, So then I have to hold the button and hard shut down the computer or whatever to get it going again. But like, yeah, it was like, it would have had to have been Microsoft because it's a Microsoft computer, or it's it's got Windows or whatever. So it would have had to have been something like that. I don't. It's weird. It's so funny that, and it's not like we were talking about like, I don't know, whatever bullshit or whatever. Oh, ghost guns or whatever. It's not like we were like having a laugh at something that was just kind of like nonsensical or whatever.
I wish I could repeat again the thing, because I want to agree with you by then pointing out what we were saying. But if I point out what we were saying, we run the risk of having it happen again, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. So yeah, it's one of those, right? Because now I'm even thinking beyond that, because a certain someone, I won't say it, but Tom, remember we were saying that we are the most fact-checky, legitimate outlet.
Well, no doubt.
And I had brought up another one with a certain person,
who is currently in some deep doo-doo.
Right. And so there's that, not to mention, of course, who you mentioned,
A lot of people that we just mentioned are people that are like persona non grata, persona non mentiona, right? Like you're not allowed to talk about them. And and then a certain object of somebody who we're not allowed to talk about that is currently like kind of like in the whatever.
Sure.
So, so-and-so's personal computer that you can carry around with you.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can't talk about that shit.
Do you think, honestly, and I'm getting real conspiratorial here, okay?
Please.
But that's the show.
That's what we do.
Right? Yeah. Do you think that someone at a certain company was insulted because you said the quality of the video was not that good because it was just off the camera of a laptop, and maybe that laptop was a certain company's product?
Oh.
You understand what I'm saying?
That might be why they are involved, right?
You know what I'm saying? Like it's because it's not YouTube. We've already, demonstrated that was not it.
I mean, it might be Adele, right?
Right.
Dude, you're getting Adele. Dude, you're watching this person whip this person's naked ass on Adele.
That's right. I can't see it very well. Well, I'm sorry. This is their
shut down.
This is their camera quality on this laptop. We need to sell a few more of these before everything shuts down. These guys are blowing our top. It's possible.
I think so.
We managed.
So, man.
Tom, I do have to say, in the defense of the censoring team, okay, if we were to go back and just use a list of keywords from the first 40 minutes of our show, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, there are certain people from a certain that are in a particularly uncomfortable position in a certain country right now that we.
Yeah, you can't even say hardly anything because we don't know what the word was that triggered it, you know?
No. I mean, I'm just saying whether it did it or not isn't even, it's just, okay, if someone was to say, well, what did you do? And you try, because remember, you've had it before where, oh, so-and-so's mad at you. Why? I was just talking to them. Well, what did you talk about, right? And then you recite the conversation back, and then someone goes,
That's what it was, yeah.
Right. I think if we did that, it starts from the minute I start recounting what we were talking about. You know what I mean? Like, oh, so Tom, what were we talking about? Well, we immediately started talking about,
That's what it was.
This.
Yep.
A racist Batman, and then J. Crew, and then also Jesus and Easter,
yeah,
and then also
we talked about the Wiggers, Nathan Scott in a Taz Gangster T-shirt and a gold tooth and a curved brim, listening to Katy Perry.
Oh, was it Jamie Kennedy? Maybe they. Oh my goodness,
could have been.
I had no idea. He's so high up. That explains his acting. How he still gets acting roles every once in a while. Could you imagine you walk into a Mason's, like a Mason or Illuminati meeting in Antarctica, right? Imagine you show up, you get off your personal helicopter, because no one has planes. It's always good, cool helicopters. So you have the wind effect. And then you walk into and you look around this whole table. It's a bunch of like old men. Maybe they're like sucking on babies for adrenochrome. Dude, they're jerking each other off. They're sucking on babies for adrenochrome, this, that, and the other. And then there's just Jamie Kennedy.
He may have gotten lost. Like, you're kind of curious how he ended up there.
And he's also wearing
weren't you the guy from Scream? Like, you pick his least, like, memorable role.
Oh, yeah. Dude, and then he's still wearing a visor sideways. He's like 50 years old.
Well, yeah.
And he's at the Grand Masons.
Kennedy isn't. Is his last name actually Kennedy, or is it like Thomas?
Oh, I don't know.
Jamie Thomas. That's if he had two first names, I think he would be.
Oh, right. That's already. I mean,
is he Jewish? Like John Turturro?
Let's see. Oh, he does not look like he's okay. My goodness.
No, I believe it.
He's not doing well. You know what I mean? He is 51. I'll give him that. But
yeah, he's like a year or two older than you, right?
and I look like shit. So
you look amazing, Jerry. Stop.
Oh, thank you. Oh, come on.
So hey, I do want to talk about.
Dude, he was raised Catholic. It actually says it in his early life.
It says that about what's his face, John Turturro.
What? I only saw the Italian part, but anyway.
Yeah, he was raised. Well, I mean, he's Italian, so he was raised Catholic. Come on.
Oh yeah, right.
Come on. Duh. So I have a couple things that I want to talk about before we do the shot and we do the thing.
Wonderful. Whoopsies.
I have two things that I want to address.
Yes.
One is something relating to a previous episode that I've come to the realization that it may have meant more than what it was, and two, how I almost died this week. Okay. Both are true. So. In the midst of my ketamine infusion, I realized I had a realization, right? If you recall, some time ago, I told you about this fight between Coolio and Busta Rhymes.
And Busta Rhymes, that's right. Yeah.
That came to me in a ketamine-fueled state, right? Mm-hmm. I imagined them fighting. I'm like, man, what if they fought? That would be something else. They're both, I'm seeing it as a real thing before my very eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this ketamine-fueled state. Now, shortly thereafter, what happened between two aging black legends in the entertainment industry?
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith versus Chris Rock, right?
Right.
That happened shortly thereafter. So the other day, I hadn't even thought about this. I hadn't even connected the dots, right? But in my most recent ketamine-fueled state, I realized or I had this, because your subconscious kind of takes over. You really don't control what you're thinking about. You just see shit as your subconscious describes it to you. And in that state, I convinced myself that I am a psychic, right? That I'm a fortune. The word that my subconscious used was a fortune teller, which I don't know if that's right or not. I don't know much about the medium world. But I was
convinced.
It's in between.
Yeah,
it's medium between medium and whatever. But in that moment, I was like, what if I am a fortune teller? You know, like, because then I started thinking about, you know, how psychics, you know, sometimes they give you that like real generic thing, and you're like, come on. Like, you know, that's pretty easy for you to say that. I mean, you're kind of like distancing yourself away from whatever. But you're being very vague and like, but hear me out. And I have throughout my life, I have had instances where I'm like, that is really like weird that would happen. I was just thinking about that, and like that song would come on the radio. I was just thinking of that obscure song, right? From the 90s, and it's playing on the current, you know, the current radio station. Like, that's odd that would happen. But, you know, I have weird things like that, but I always chalk it up to coincidence. But in this ketamine state, I was like, well, hold on. You know, because psychics sometimes give very vague things, and people pick on them like, oh, if you were really psychic, if psychics, why don't you guys win the lottery? And they're like, well, because we only get what we get, and we kind of have to work with it. And, you know, you look at Nostradamus's, his predictions or whatever, and they're very like hard to get through, and they're not specific at all.
No, they're not.
So, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the reason why I had this moment where I'm like, what if I'm a fortune teller, was because I realized I made that connection between Coolio and Busta Rhymes and Will Smith and Chris Rock. And I'm like, if I had spoken more generally, I could have said, hey guys, I had this vision where two aging black men, like titans in the entertainment industry back in the 90s, have an altercation, have like a physical altercation. You know, instead of saying, well, Coolio and Busta Rhymes fucking duke it out. You know, like if I would have seen it, because I don't know if it was Coolio and Busta Rhymes or what, you know, I was confused in that moment. So I'm like, maybe this is how psychics receive information. And then they have to learn over time, like, hey, it's not Coolio and Busta Rhymes that are fighting. It's two aging black titans of the entertainment industry having an altercation, right? You know, if I would have said that, now imagine if I would have said that, if I would have been vague and I would have said, hey, Jerry, something that's going to happen in the coming days is going to be two aging black titans of the entertainment industry are going to have a physical altercation for the world to see. If I would have said that, and then a few days later, Will Smith walked up and slapped Chris Rock across the face in front of everybody at the Oscars, would you not have been impressed? Would you not have been like, how did you know?
I would have immediately texted you and said, why was your subconscious watching this shitty show?
You know, and because my regular conscious wouldn't. So that's what's going on when I turn my TV, when I fall asleep at night, my TV is running. But wouldn't you be shocked by that, Jerry? Like, wouldn't that have been like a big moment for our friendship? You would have been like, Tom, you're fucking psychic.
Yes, and I would have worried, you know, because then I'm saying, so you're psychic, and your psychic self chose to grab one piece of information from the immediate future, and that is merely to tell us that two black guys fought each other.
But
on TV.
What is more Tom Miller than pointing out two black guys fighting on stage at like an awards ceremony? These are all things that I don't care about, Jerry, right? Like the plight of the black man, aging 90s entertainment, African-American stars, black on black crime. None of this stuff do I care about. So like, you know, that's kind of like perfect Tom Miller fortune tellery, right?
So you trolled yourself.
Yeah.
In showing, okay. So you revealed to yourself you are a fortune teller / medium or whatever.
Whatever in between,
Right. And in whatever, and in doing that, the way you chose to tell yourself was to troll yourself.
And say Busta Rhymes versus Coolio, right?
Oh, on top of it to make it wrong. Yeah, exactly. First of all, take away the gusto. You can't even, you know, it's not even available to you in real time to show as a skill. That kind of thing. So that's all fine. What I'm saying is, like, for example, we know that there are a lot of solar flares going on right now.
That might have been it too. They might be That might be what distracted me. I might have said Will Smith and Chris Rock, but instead I said because I was confused because of the solar flares, right?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying. There's all these solar flares. There are so much going on, in the world, especially 7 days in the future, or I guess however many it might have been.
I have like the short-sightedness of foretelling.
It's literally your medium. Your subconscious takes their own glasses off and then puts them back on and goes, oh shit. And then there's like that 5.
I got to share this real quick.
Yeah, I got to just let everybody know. Holy shit, did you see that? And what you chose to show, what you chose to reveal was a fucking cultural bit of nonsense.
Yeah,
as opposed to
pop culture knowledge. Like that's the only thing I'm good at, fortune telling. Like, cops are like, like when people are like, well, we need a doctor. Is there a doctor? And like the gender studies doctor is like, yeah, I'm a doctor. Well, this guy's dying. Well, I'm a gender studies doctor, right? So that I'm not going to be able to help you. So like people are like, man, the cops or whatever, they've got like this cold case that they're working, or like it's like a case of a missing persons case. And they're like, man, if only we could get our hands on like a psychic. And I'm like, yo, hey, I'm a psychic. And they're like,
I'm no Patricia Arquette, but I'm here.
They're like, here, touch this bloody, bloody onesie or whatever, because it's a baby, right? Touch this bloody onesie, right? Tell us where this baby is.
No,
and I grab it,
bloody
and I'm
onesie worn by a man.
Right, and I'm like, I put it against my head, and I'm like, oh, I see, a new episode of Fairly Odd Parents coming on, April 31st or whatever. That doesn't help us. Where's the baby? I'm like, oh, I'm not that kind of psychic. Like, I just know like pop culture shit. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm getting like, I don't know who's famous anymore or whatever. A new Justin Timberlake album or whatever is coming out. Right. Yeah, I'm so far behind. Like, that's the only reason why my subconscious was like, Busta Rhymes and Coolio, because they had to pick some like references from way back in the 90s.
That you still would have had, yeah.
They would have been like, hey, here's 2 black people, 2 black men, entertainers, work with that. These people or whatever. I can't give you everything, right? I'm going to give you something I could just that you imagine, can relate to, right?
Imagine if your subconscious was even worse than that. Like, you have very dated references, but you also manage to like talk about them as if they're new. So, for example, you just said Justin Timberlake has a new album. You're
if I said Chumbawamba has a new album coming,
no, dude, you'd be having the, you have the thing on your forehead, right? And you go, after recently leaving his supergroup NSYNC, but just before the breakup of his relationship with Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake will release a series of albums over a 20-year period. The latest will be like you become Entertainment Tonight. You understand what I'm saying?
But it's like really good because if you can get through all of my nonsensical stuff of like just like knowledge, like my Gene Shalit stuff, like if you can get through all that, at the end, there's going to be a nugget from the future where you can be like, there we go. There it is. Let's go get him. Let's go get this baby or whatever who's like hidden in the woods or some shit.
Predator
but it's like,
baby.
that's how I am as a fortune teller. So I wonder, I have heard some interesting theories. I've actually read some interesting theories about ketamine being like a ghost drug where like you can see ghosts. Now, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Go ahead. Tell me what you're going to say because it might be.
No, I mean, look, I'm not trying to rain on your parade.
We're not trying to. Well, go ahead.
But are we literally returning back to Tom Miller, Tom Miller, court ghost interpreter, and the only way that you can see AIDS-riddled Tom Hanks defending O.J. Simpson in his trial for the eBay theft of his goods,
gloves or whatever. Yeah.
The only way that so you're saying the only way that you can act as ghost court interpreter or
is
court ghost interpreter,
that's exactly
is through ketamine, and we're mentioning this 2 weeks later.
So here's the thing, Jerry. I think I've read it since our last talk, but it was somebody who was talking on Reddit. It was like a high strangeness sub that I follow, which actually has some pretty interesting shit in it. But every once in a while, you get a dud like this. And this kid was talking about how ketamine is like the ghost drug, and people who are on ketamine can enter into the spiritual realm and like visit with their dead loved ones. And I'm like, I've never experienced that. Then he's in the context that he's talking about because his wife works with PTSD patients who are going through the ketamine treatment. So I was like, first of all, like most of what you said here is not right. Like you've either she's lying to you or you've not been listening. But now what you're saying, I'm curious because like if that's kind of like a gateway into entering into this, I have had moments on ketamine where like I have had some very spiritual encounters where like I've and again it's like it's your subconscious pushing into your consciousness, which is what I think it is more than anything. You know, all my subconscious is like, you are a sinful, disgusting creature. You need to deal with this now. Here you go. Here's all your shit that you need to unload. You need to deal with. And you can't do anything because now you're on horse tranquilizer and you can't run away from all this, right? So that's like my subconscious vomiting everything up into my regular consciousness for me to deal with. And in that way, it's very spiritual. I'm not like, oh, I went and I saw God while I was on ketamine, right? It's more like my subconscious regurgitating into my conscious, like, hey, this is all the shit that you've like repressed and you've hidden away. You have to deal with it now. Good luck. Here it is. Bye. You know, and that's kind of what it is. And I've had some really like scary times where I've like had to deal with stuff that I've purposely repressed during that time. But it's like at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm on horse tranquilizer, so like I don't care, you know. But yeah, that was kind of like that happened this week. Anyway, or last week, rather, when I did my ketamine. I realized that I'm a fortune teller. Now, the other thing that I was going to tell you is I almost died this week, right? And I know you're laughing, but it's a real thing, right? I'm
laughing at the fortune teller because I still, in my head, imagine you as ghost you trying to tell you stuff. And then also, because you're a ghost, saying ghost-ass shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like reciting lines from The Sixth Sense that no one remembers. You know what I mean? Like, because Bruce Willis
what is the guy with the blonde streak in his hair? What does he say to Bruce Willis when he's in the bathroom with the gun? You don't remember.
Right.
It's not meaningful.
No one remembers. No. Yeah, so you're saying that, you know, because ghosts on top of ghosts. Or maybe then you're going into the Casper movie, the one with Christina Ricci, and you say,
listen, I was a kid when that movie came out. Christina Ricci was my first Hollywood crush. You know,
is that
by then, Harvey Weinstein had already fucked her like half a dozen times.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, her forehead grew 3 inches that day.
He fucked her so hard, her forehead grew.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, terrible, Jerry.
Did you know that he said he's been in a better mood in prison because he's stopped snacking on M&Ms?
No. Where's the punchline? Is that like really what he said?
No, he said that he was really addicted to food and not controlling himself.
Clearly.
Yeah. No, Harvey, tell us something, you know. And apparently he would walk around eating M&Ms all the time. And somehow that made him fat. I don't know.
Well, there's a correlation there.
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't think you need to be a nutritionist to identify it.
He's a terrible, nasty person. I don't even believe a word he says. Frankly, I just went out and spent money on more M&Ms.
In rebellion to.
They must be good for you if he said don't have them. You know what I mean?
Patrick Howard says it's nice that horses get to see God. Horses are like they're constantly forced to relive their horse subconscious, which is like, you should have eaten more grass today, right? But then Mike in Manitoba says Ghost Tom yelling pink socks for everyone, which makes me think of like, you know, you have like those ghosts that are dragging like the ball and chain, or, you know, they've got the chains attached to them, but Ghost Tom just has like a pink sock hanging out of his asshole from a prolapsed anus. So that's the kind of ghost that I want to be. Okay. Goodness. And then I almost died this week. Let me tell you that story real quick. I've been tapering off of medication. My psychiatrist and I have been working to get me off of medications. I mentioned this some weeks ago, I think, where I was like, I want to no longer take this medication, but and that was the whole reason for me getting back in touch with my psychiatrist. But she's like, I think we should up that dose actually, because you're like, you don't need to come off of it because you're still fucked up. But she's like, we also need to increase it because. And I was like, well, I came to you to get off of it. She's like, how about we do this? We'll compromise. We'll get you off of some other medications, and we'll try to, without, kind of throwing you into like an imbalance or like throwing you off or whatever, so that you're all fucked up in addition to already being all fucked up. So,
can I ask you a question about, I need a little background.
Please.
Is the psychiatrist on a scale of 1 to to a member of our chat's mom? What's the attraction level?
Oh, no, 0. Oh, like most,
0? No,
listen,
well, here's why I
most
asked.
women are going to be
Here's why I
0
asked.
compared to that. You can't compare.
No, but
you can't use her as a comparison. She's a goddess among women.
I'm saying from 1 to, So
Yeah,
the reason
she's a
I'm
0.
saying is basically you just said, I went back to my psychiatrist to get off. She said, I'm not going to get you off. We're going to increase it, but then we'll get you off anyway. Get you off on other stuff. And I just keep hearing you saying I want to get off. So she says get off, and I'll get you off, but not get you off. And I'm saying that's a lot of getting off.
I'll tell you what, I have never gotten off to the psychiatrist. not the way that I've gotten off to somebody else's mom. So,
has your ghost medium self?
No, my ghost medium self has never gotten off to my psychiatrist. Not the way that I would have gotten off to somebody else's mom. But she said, hey, here's the deal. We only have like one less viewer right now, so I assume that was her. But
oh no,
no, I don't think so. Her husband is still here, so that's a good thing. So, anyways. So we've been moving around some medications, and I've gotten off of one that I was taking for years, and it's called propranolol, and it's I got on it initially for anxiety, but then they increased it for migraines because it's an abortive medication for anxiety. Or I'm sorry, it's a preventative for like if you're about to go in to do something that's going to make you anxious, you take one, and then of a very low dose. And then they upped it to like a constant thing, so it kind of like reduce it just generally. And then they upped it again because it works for migraines as a prophylaxis for migraines. And so I'm taking like a lot of this pill, right, propranolol. And they were like, let's get you off of that first. So I go and I see the neurologist, I see the psychiatrist, I talk, and like my primary care physician changed in this time. So like I have no contact with him, but he's like kept in contact with these other 2 doctors. So I don't even have to deal with this other guy because my old one retired, the one that told me not to get vaccinated or whatever, my awesome that I used to really like. He retired. So now, which I mean, good for him because at least he gets to go do something else. He doesn't have to like continue to do this bullshit, like pushing.
He doesn't have to keep putting a finger up your butt.
Right. And he may be doing that in private practice though. So I don't know. I don't want to put that, I don't want to assume or anything. But anyways, they're relaying to him this new doctor this whole time who I still haven't met. And then they come back and they tell me, hey, man, like, here's what you need to do. And so this propranolol, I'm off it for a week now, right? Oh, there she is. There's Stephicus. Hey. Say hi to your mom for me, right? No, that's Mark Wahlberg. He says that. Mark Wahlberg says, hey, say hi to your mother for me. But anyways, so I'm off propranolol for a week. Right? Since last, I don't know. Anyways, I'm off of it for a week, and I'm folding laundry and doing dishes, and my watch keeps buzzing. And I actually wrote this down as a joke because I thought it was a joke. It still kind of is, but I wrote it down as a joke that I wanted to share on the show. That my watch is so used to me being a disgusting fat body that like if I get up and I fold the laundry, it's like, hey, you've been exercising for 10 minutes. Good job. Because that's what it said. It said your exercise, you started exercising 10 minutes ago or whatever. Congratulations. Keep it up. Let's keep working. And it sets the timer going. And so this happened twice in one day. And I was like, man, I must be really like putting it in or whatever, and then my watch
vigorous trash pickup.
Right. And like my, and my watch, and I made the joke to my wife. I'm like, ha ha ha. my watch is now like, it knows that I'm a disgusting fat body. It like, as soon as I put any effort into anything, it's like, oh, you're exercising. Good for you. Like, hey, good job, Tom. And I didn't even think anything of it. I just thought, like, damn. I did do like 2 baskets of laundry, so that's kind of a big thing for me, right? Normally, I'm watching fucking ghost shows or whatever. And then, so anyways, we're sitting on the computer reading or some shit. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. So then the next day, that night, I'm going to sleep, and my heart is just beating out of my chest, like pounding in my chest. And I'm like, wow, this is annoying. I'm like, did I like eat something that I shouldn't have eaten? Did I drink a caffeinated drink? I don't drink caffeine after like 6 ever. Just because, mostly because like most things that have caffeine in them are like fatty, and I'm trying to lose weight, right? So I stopped drinking caffeine after 6. And so I'm like, why is my heart beating so hard? And then I lie down, and they told me that I had to like check my blood pressure and check my pulse often. And I wasn't wearing my watch that night because I was charging it. And then, so that it could tell me, hey, congratulations. It was like overworked the night before, right? Because it was like keeping track of how active I was when I was like knitting and shit, right? And so I'm like, I hop up and I put on the pulse oximeter and I put on the blood pressure cuff and I check my shit. And it's like at the threshold of like what it's supposed to be, like what the doctor said. Like I had to pull open my notebook and shit. This is like at midnight, right? I have to open my notebook where I was keeping notes from when I talked to my doctor. And it says like, if it's over 130, I think 130 over 90, or I'm sorry, if it's outside of like the 70, I'm sorry, 100 and 130, if it's outside of that for the systolic, let me know. Or if it's above, or if it's outside of the range of like 70 and 90 or whatever for diastolic for blood pressure, let me know. But it was at like 119 over 90 or whatever, which is still pretty good. And so, but I'm like, it's right at that threshold, right? And then my pulse was like 113 or something, and I hadn't done anything. I think I got up to take a piss, and then I went to lay down, and I was like, wow, my heart is like really beating through my chest. I'm like, and all I did was, it's not like I did like 100 push-ups or something. I went to take a piss, and then I walked back. Now I know this huge dick having to like lug it out of my pants or whatever, oh, I'm just kidding. Sort of. But no, I laid down and my heart was pounding. I was like, man. So 113 or whatever, and then 119 over 90 or whatever. I'm like right at the threshold of what she said. So then I wake up at 4:00 in the morning, right? Same problem. Like my pounding in my chest probably woke me up. But I like sit up and I'm like, man. So I sit up, I take my blood pressure again, I take my pulse again, and it's the same, very similar rates or whatever. So then I go back to sleep. And then I wake up at 7, and I had to sub that morning. I was actually subbing for an elementary school, and which I've grown to love subbing for elementary schools. Like I'm huge into it. Only like my kids' elementary school, because then I get to go bug my kids during the day, and I get to see my kids during the day and shit. Other than that, I don't want anything to do with elementary schools. Like fuck that, because those kids are just like a nightmare or whatever. But the kids at my kids' school. Like I know that school and I know the kids there, so like they know me and whatever. Like I get it, but I show up and at 7:00 in the morning, I'm getting ready. I'm like all dressed up in like my dress shirt and tie and shit, my slacks and dress shoes, but like everything's all unbuttoned and like sloppy. And my wife wakes up and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I'm hurting. Like I don't know. Like I'm just like in bad shape over here. And I take my blood pressure again, pulse again. It's the same. And so then when I'm at school, as soon as we got a break, I went and called my doctor and I left a voicemail saying, hey man, I know you said like to call you if this, or if it's like repeatedly in this threshold or whatever. But I'm like, I'm at like 120 for resting pulse rate sometimes. And then like 119 over 90 for my blood pressure. So I'm like, I was like, I'm at the threshold consistently. What do I do? Call me back. I love you. Bye. And then, but then she calls me back and she's like, hey, so here's what we need to do. She's like, take it easy. Don't be acting up. Don't do anything crazy. She's like, I'm going to talk to your primary care doctor. I'm going to talk to your neurologist, see if we need to go back on the propranolol. Cause that's kind of like,
we need to see how many times you've been getting off.
Right. Yeah. And once I had her on the phone, it was like 0. But as soon as I went back to looking at pictures of Stephanie's mom, different story. But yeah, she's like, eventually she came back and she called me and she's like, hey, I talked to everybody. They said you're good. You're at the threshold. You're going to have to kind of like tough it out because this is a normal thing that happens with withdrawal from these sorts of medications. They were like, just hang in there. Don't overdo it. Don't just slowly.
Did they also mention, Tom, I have a theory.
They said don't look at Stephakus's mom's Instagram was one thing that they said, right?
I have a theory. I don't want to, I hope it doesn't ruin the ending. Did they also ask you how far away you were from Cleveland?
They didn't because they know. They have my address on file. So
okay, well, I mean, you do travel, though, Tom. You are allowed to travel.
Well, so, I don't travel. You know that. I drove past Cleveland, I guess, recently. So, yeah, what's up?
Well,
I went up to Wisconsin recently. What's going on?
Well, when the heart of rock and roll is still beating.
The heart of rock and roll.
You understand? And we know the heart of rock and roll is supposed to be in Cleveland. And you are nowhere near it. There's a strain that I'm assuming, if you don't have like Bluetooth or some kind of internet connection to broadcast, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is a strain that you could be, unwittingly putting yourself through by not being anywhere near Cleveland.
I need to return. Are you saying I need to return to Cleveland?
I think that's it. For your heart to feel,
to return.
At peace, to have its full strength. Yeah. Because
the heart of rock and roll.
Yeah, Tom, they're not all winners, but I don't feel like it was that wrong either. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. Stephakus is in the chat just blowing it up because I'm over here talking about her mother.
Oh my goodness. So you're saying to me this whole time, she's just blowing up the chat because you're talking about her mom. She said not to come to
her hood, but she said, I heard what you said about my dear mother from the kitchen, Tom. And the thing is, I feel like I've avoided making any kind of like straight up claims about Stephakus's mother, right?
You merely stated that no one compares to her. Basically.
Yeah, that's a pretty kind thing to say about somebody's mother.
Which, by the way, I still have no way of checking in on.
Well, you're going to have to take my word for it because I'm not going to take a screenshot. It would be outside of my. Yeah, it would be like I wouldn't be allowed to do that.
No, I understand. I'm just saying. We now have two claims, Tom. I'm sorry, but we now have two claims from you. Number one, that there is a particular video circulating.
Yeah, well, that's a fact.
Of legitimate,
so and so whooping on somebody's so and so's ass.
Yes,
totally naked. It's not organic either. The thing about that video is like it's not really organic, right?
Little stage, huh?
I want you to look back at your own life, and I can think of like one time, maybe twice, where I have been in broad daylight, totally nude, and walking. Right? Like when you're now I'm not going to say not all of us are, porn stars, right? And I understand that some porn stars are like actively on their feet. But I would say that like most of us think about how many times you were completely naked and your partner was completely naked and you were like walking about, like you were upright. Like how often does that happen? It's not a common thing. Now, when I see this, like think back to how many times you have walked. Now, in the circumstances,
just walking around,
just strolling around about in like a 10-foot by 10-foot square.
Oh, we're done.
Right?
Oh, I'm gonna go get a, sandwich.
I'm talking about in the throes of lovemaking, right? Or
in the midst of it.
You haven't actively, because let's be honest, sex is over when the guy ejaculates, right? Like we know that. That's when it's over. That's just how it is. Because good luck getting a guy who's already ejaculated to do anything, to continue actively participating in this action.
Well, let me tell you, Tom, as a point of reference here, just for all those ladies listening in the chat who may be saying, what are you kidding? Well, I want to give, because maybe they don't have that much experience, Tom. Maybe we need to, clarify, throw some things out there. So, ladies, here's the thing. In the middle, in the throes of it, in the when in the foxhole, all right, you know what I'm saying? When in the the tomahawk, I don't know. Anyway,
ham wallet, meat curtain. What's the?
Yeah, all of those, right? Then here's what's happening. Okay, typically, a man is eating while doing it. You know what I mean? He's
Have
eating.
you ever had that? Have you ever done that, Jerry?
You may not. Hold on a second. First
Okay,
of all,
please.
I don't even know why you're acting like this isn't how things go. So, generally, lady, what happens is you have some sort of sandwich. That's because it keeps everything connected. And as long as you don't toast it too bad, you shouldn't have crumbs that make it an awkward situation. A few, but let's be honest, things were going to go flying all over each other anyway. What's a few crumbs? So you're eating while this is happening, right? Then you're done either eating or with the, with the playing around. You know what I mean? With the 2 balls and a stick in the alleyway, that it's just over. And then what is a person to do if you're both done eating and done playing small ball, playing hide the weasel, playing.
Do it.
Ghost guns in a hallway.
Terrible, Jerry. Chris Rose says clothing optional in our house, and I'm here to tell you that clothing is not optional.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Oof. Yeah.
That's our joke.
Wow.
Is often I'll say, oh man, I hate talking about my own sex life because there's somebody listens to this show who
shouldn't know this stuff,
who doesn't need to hear this sort of stuff about
right.
About
well, you're giving a preamble, right? They can skip now, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, cover your ears, guy who doesn't need to hear about this sort of thing.
Right.
No, but that's our joke. Is we'll say, hey, let's go do such and such, clothing optional, and then she'll say, clothing is not an option. That's her response to it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how it's been for, gosh, I'm almost at the point where I can say decades, right? Because we've been married for so long. But that's how it's been for the longest time. And but yeah, that's how it goes. But I've never eaten during sex. I have smoked immediately after sex. I've never used a partner as an ashtray. You would expect Britney Spears to have been used, right? I imagine Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, I'm sure they were used as ashtrays a time or two.
I would assume Britney before used as an ashtray. Britney now uses herself as an ashtray.
Yeah, she probably. Oh, she's a filthy creep. But I'm glad that things have worked out for Britney.
Isn't she pregnant now?
Yeah, she is pregnant. She's pregnant now that she's they didn't waste any time, right? That
pregnant with hope, right?
Yeah, she's full of it, right?
Yeah.
I feel a little bad because Stephicus, she was this is too much, right? Because when we were talking,
I saw that she
really into
used caps and everything.
Stephicus's mom lore, right? When we're doing that, she's like, this is too much. But then immediately after, she's getting a cup of water after doing of things, right? So she's still on board with the conversation, but she's like, hey, let's ease off my mom, all right?
Yeah.
She's a lovely woman.
I don't think
anybody would disagree with the fact that Stephicus' mom is a saint among, she's a goddess among women. But
sure.
Yeah, she's you'll have to get with her, or you'll have to get with Megabit, because
what I mean?
I won't do it, but maybe he will. Megabit seems like the kind of guy who's got looser morals than I. No, I
look
don't know.
for the show. Well, no. What if you said? And I don't mean you, because it puts you're in a precarious position because you're the one.
I'm a double precarious position.
Yeah, so maybe for him it would be, look, for the show's sake, because maybe
Jerry needs to see your mother-in-law.
Right.
Just a picture from Instagram.
I actually think that Steph, as much as she's getting maybe a little bit, like, hey, come on, huh? Like, maybe she has a little bit of that. I'm also honestly believing that she'd be like, all right, look, this isn't going to go away anyway, right?
So we should just submit.
Right. Jerry is probably going to be a little bit more judicious. Tom's had a lot of, thinking to do about all this.
I'm already like all in on Steph mom, right? Like I'm
Right.
all in. Like I'm a huge fan, right? You are kind of like the unbiased judge.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you personally, in American Idol, when each one of them personally picks and they say, oh, what about this one? And then the rest of them are going, oh, I don't know.
Right.
And then one of them comes out, they're teary-eyed. I don't know, Lionel Richie, Katy Perry, someone who can still manage to get something to secrete from their body that isn't the devil. And they say, no, but I remember being, and then they convince the other people, and then that person gets to go on to Las Vegas or Los Angeles or wherever it is they go, and be raped by Harvey Weinstein. So
while using you as an M&M dish,
while also using you as an M&M dish, with your head in a potted plant or whatever it was in that story we all read.
No, it was. Come on, it was Jennifer Lawrence, and she was a potted house plant that got jerked off in.
No. Do you remember the non-famous girl who came out against him, who said that he let's just say
it was Jennifer
finished
Lawrence.
in a plant? Oh, he finished in Oh, I see. Oh, now I get it. Okay.
He pulled out and he finished jacking off in the house plant instead of Jennifer Lawrence.
She didn't want to get mad at she didn't want to give away that it was Jennifer Lawrence. But it
was Jennifer Lawrence, as I recall. That's why she hasn't been in anything since then. Because she showed her butthole and she got turned inside out by Harvey Weinstein's nasty, mushy dick.
M&M's.
And he used her as an M&M dish.
My goodness.
And then finished in the plant. What a mess. Like Harvey Weinstein's office sounds like a party, but it also sounds like the carnival, but then you're like, oh, sweet, the carnival. But then they're like,
it's like, oh, have you ever cleaned up after the carnival?
But also you can only go in the freak house, right? Or like the freak show. Yeah. Like that's it. Then you're like, well, fuck it, it's a carnival, right? So you still go anyway. All right, so that's all I got. What we got to do the shot, and we got to do the welcome, and then we got to do the whoopsies, since we still didn't get to do the apps episode, right? I have this week. I have something called Howler Head. It is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey with natural banana flavor.
Wow,
Howler Head. Kind of
holy. Can I mention a drink that
do whatever you want.
I'm not drinking.
None of this matters.
I want to mention that my wife managed to find, and I didn't know this existed, canned wine.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, if there's something fancy that can be white trash, white trash-sized, they're going to do it, right? Just like they put wine in a box, but they're like, what kind of self-respecting white trash person brings a box of wine, right? Like, how can we make it even more white trashy, right? Let's put it in cans, right? Or
can we put it in cans and also in a size in which that you could put it in a purse or something?
Yeah, it's not like the regular size can, like the Coke can. It's like the...
No.
Yeah, it's like a smaller can, kind of like a.
It's not the giganto cans.
Yeah.
Well, they have the bigger
one that you
cans
can put in your pocket, and you can convince people. Like it's convincing enough that people might think that it's your dick, right? Like it's that size.
You hear that, ladies? Right? Huh?
If you see a guy with like a can size, like a large dick, chances are it's a can of wine. In which case, you might be like, either way, you're not going to be disappointed because you're like, oh, is that your dick? And you're like, no, it's a can of wine. And they're like, well. I'm also into wine,
Right.
Like I'm super into that too. So
could you imagine that girl? You imagine a girl in that case? Oh, I'm into canned wine and small wieners.
like average wieners. Come on.
Or I don't know. Yeah, average ones with. I'm into wieners without a bottle cap top or whatever. Or
I don't need a bottle. I don't want a bottle opener for my wieners, right?
No.
I just want I want to be able to. right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you
Can
want.
Can I get some fizz? This is the real.
Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Obviously.
all right. So who are we
Not
cheersing?
carbonated.
What do we do normally? Do we do the welcome first, or do we do the shot?
I think the welcome comes first.
All right.
I think.
Mike in Manitoba, super fan, who texted me on the side, believe it or not.
Oh my
Megan,
goodness.
to let me know, because he doesn't comment on the chat. He can't be like brought into this, right? He's got a good life. Right?
Hey, Jacob, you just missed us talking about wieners and wine.
Yeah, no, Jacob, he's not supposed to be listening right now because he's supposed to catch he's supposed to like watch it on replay while he's on a plane. He's got he's got like a flight coming up and he's got to save this for later. So get out of here, Jacob, or like mute it and you can continue.
Or maybe he could get the 45 minutes of the first episode that was taken down by the overlords.
Yeah, you can hang out here. That's fine. So Superfan, Megabit Banshee with the super hot mother-in-law, James Pregler, Chris Rose, the King of Jordan, Patrick Howard, and Stephicus with the super hot mom. And then also Mostly Wave, who just joined us. He said, hey, some Hitler's birthday steaming. And Jacob and J-Dubs. J-Dubs was actually in earlier. Let me write this down, because later on when I come back and I look at like the names of people who were here, I'm like, yeah, that's my dude. That's my dude, right. J-Dubs. I'll put him on here. All right, and then what are we cheersing to? Let me tell you something, Jerry. Let me tell you something, brother. The
NWO.
Yeah. Well, don't give away any spoilers yet of what.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's why he said he just landed in Nashville. He's already done with the flight.
Oh, he's already there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and canned wine equals White Claw, which is totally cool too because I'm like super into White Claw. But it's the same type of can, right? I'm a White Claw guy, and I'm not ashamed because I'm old enough to where like if somebody wants to make fun of me for drinking White Claw, I'm like, I don't give a shit what you say. You're 20 years old, right? Like, what have you done in your life, right? Nothing, probably.
The answer is I'm still drunk. You know?
Yeah, I like a White Claw. It's delicious. It's just like it's like drinking flavored TV static, right? Who cares? And like nobody, you don't even know that you're drinking because it just tastes like nothing at all. But I posted on a thing. There's a group that I belong to on Facebook called Edgy Atheist Meme, or that sounds like edgy atheist nonsense, but whatever, or whatever. And it's like where people post atheist memes that people post or whatever. We share them, we dunk on them, and we laugh or whatever. Then there's a lot of like Catholic Protestant infighting or whatever, which like exists. It's funny, like our Discord, we have a lot of like Eastern Orthodox, a lot of Roman Catholics, and a lot of Protestants, and like nobody seems to give a shit about the differences or whatever. But in this group, it's like it's everywhere. Like you can't post anything without somebody getting upset. They're like, oh, that sounds like some Protestant bullshit. But like, hey, we're all here to dunk on. Even like the Muslims and the Jews show up, and the Hindus, they show up and they're like, oh, look at these fucking atheists or whatever, and we all dunk on the atheists. And but I posted the other day, somebody posted a comment from Facebook or something where it said, hey, Christians, how come with all these prayers for Ukraine, how come Russia is still advancing? How come there's still war in Russia and Ukraine? Checkmate, Christians. They did that whole thing. And I replied with, well, some of us are praying for Russia, right? Like, so it kind of cancels one or the other out. And it was not well received, my comment. But anyways.
Oh no.
So what are we cheersing to? Because I know recently we've cheers to the conflicts or whatever was going on in Ukraine.
Well, I think we have to cheers to all the vagina surrounding a grown man drinking White Claw and the commonality it has with White Claw. Very dry, both of them.
Yeah. I think we should toast to toast to all the women who have dried up like the Sahara anytime they see me with a can of White Claw sweet tea. I'll tell you what, that tastes a lot like cough medicine again. Like,
oh my god,
I don't know what it is, but these things that I typically drink.
Is your wife just replacing your alcohol with
NyQuil?
NyQuil.
She might.
They're like, she's like, Tom has responsibilities now. We have to end the show at 2 hours. We can't.
Yeah, we got 20 minutes for you to do your whoopies. So, well, I'm hiccuping and trying to recover from these hiccups that I got from drinking. NyQuil or whatever.
You poor son bitch.
Oh, man, I am not the man that I used to be. I used to put back like 2-3 bottles of NyQuil, without getting the hiccups. Here I am.
Yeah.
30.
I used to freebase Robitussin.
I used to mainline it into my penis. in between my toes, right?
Dude, it's
because I have a job, okay?
Dude, it's a version of that joke. I don't know if you ever watched Zach Galifianakis
live
at the Purple Onion. Right?
I love that. Dude, oh man, please.
Where he just goes, all right. A baby talking about how his beard hurts, whatever. He just goes, my beard hurts. My beard really hurts. Right? And I'm sitting here listening to you, and you're saying something about your dick, and I'm going, no, say wiener. My wiener. Because then,
where's my wiener? Have you seen my wiener?
I mean? Yeah, because then it becomes that. You know what I mean? It's like someone may happen upon the conversation and go, oh, I mainline Robitussin into my dick. And that's like, oh, wow.
It sounds hardcore until you realize that it's Robitussin, and you're like,
right.
All right.
But then you flip it, right? And you go, yo, I used to mainline Robitussin in my wiener.
Is that person that you're imitating, is his name Nathan Scott? Does he wear a brimmed hat? Just like a little less cockeyed than normal?
Yeah, he's like, yo, bitch, get inside my ride. We're about to mainline. We're about to drink White Claws and mainline Robitussin in my wiener.
Oh, yeah, that's a wigger for sure. Oh, but only 80% of one.
0.8%. That's right. Or excuse me. Yeah.
0.8%. That's like the amount of people who have died of COVID. But
not according to the laptop I read. Oh, wait.
Oh, no. You can't be talking about that shit. Yeah. I don't remember what I was going to say. It was something important, but it was whatever. Stephicus said she's still here somehow. God bless her.
Wow.
My goodness. She's such a good sport about us talking, like saying kind things about her mother. She's such a kind sport about how we talk about how beautiful her mother is. And then she said that she got kicked out of a group on Facebook for calling it the Wandering Jew, but that's the name of the plant. And, that tells you a lot about the plant community. Like, they're not as well aware of, like, what they should. Oh, what I was going to tell you? I was going to say the best joke on that Zach Galifianakis Purple Onion thing was, like, he leads with it. He says, my name is Zach Galifianakis, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah,
and then,
I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
And then he says, I'm named after my granddad. I get my middle name from my granddad. My full name is Zach Granddad Galifianakis. Like I love that, and then he does the whole thing where he's like, my roommate is Asian, and I play this song every time he comes home, and he's like so fed up with it, and he goes ding 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 ding, and on the piano. But that was like 20 years ago, right? When you could make racist jokes and not get canceled. But here we are, right?
Here we are.
Anyways, man, talking about Stephicus's mom has really got me. Let's do the woobies.
All right, let's do the woobies. I do want to make a brief mention again to please. Stephicus here, because it is she. Okay, so not only have we made mention to her mother many times in the last, I don't know, half hour,
whatever it's been.
Yeah, whatever it's been.
Hour,
but
it's been, actually.
Hour. But then we also, in the middle of this, have spoken at length about sexual activities and eating and all kinds of other nonsense. Then we've also managed to bring up somehow mainlining the tussin into the wieners, and like that is, arguably some pretty offensive shit, right? I mean, maybe not to us, maybe we don't feel that way, but clearly, let's say, for example, the people who were listening to the first 45 minutes of the show that then shut us down may have a negative opinion about what we tend to say here on the show. And then Steph, after being bombarded with all of this information, White Claw especially, that was the worst of it, comes in with the hot bants about how she was in a plant group on Facebook and was kicked out for saying, well, there's this plant named this. And they're like, LOL, get out. It's just this really funny situation where we literally talked about enough shit tonight to get shut down. And then it's just such an innocent return, and then you guys are all so nice is I guess really what I'm getting at. In spite of everything that we talk about and all the hot bants and all that kind of stuff, it's also just oh, hey, you want to hear this really kind of dumb, wholesome thing? That's also part of this group. It's pretty incredible. Here, wait a minute. Hold on. Working from home today as wife and daughter have the vid. My son and I have none. What? I'm so lost. Tom, Chris Rose in the chat is saying, working from home today as wife and daughter have the vid. My son and I have none.
Uh-huh.
What? Do you have any idea what that?
Well,
what we're talking about?
I would assume that based on what I've been told by Dr. Fauci and my own governor, right, Bashir, they seem to be pretty on the ball with the vaccine.
Oh, vid. You know what it is, Tom? I'm
say
sorry.
that.
Now that I get it, I assumed he. Here's the awful thing.
You didn't even recognize that being.
Vid is also shorthand for video. And the video we've been speaking about on and off in two different parts of the show now, right?
So you're saying that
so then I read
and
that
daughter
as,
were subjected to that video.
That's what I was like. What the fuck, dude? And of course now I get it because
he meant the other thing that we're not allowed to talk about on the show. Yeah,
right.
I would say that probably, if the wife and daughter have the vid, I would say that they're probably not vaccinated, but I would say that Chris Rose is probably vaccinated. Undoubtedly, there's not a shadow of doubt in my mind.
I mean, seriously, yeah,
that's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Did you also know that you can't get the vid when you get myocarditis?
Yeah, you can't. No, you can't. I've seen
that happen. You can't have two at once. I don't know if you know that. No. It's actually
you
impossible.
Have to pick. You have to pick which one you want. Which one do you want? The one that you have a 99.7% chance of surviving, or the one that it's like an automatic death sentence after 5 years. Which one do you want? Is it COVID or is it? My brother has COVID right now. No, he doesn't even have COVID.
Oh my goodness.
He was exposed to it, and he doesn't watch the show anymore, so I don't care. I'll talk about him all day long. Okay. He has he was discovered he went to a concert with somebody who found out that they had COVID because they took a test. Not like they actually had symptoms. Not because they had symptoms.
Yeah,
no,
right.
Because nobody had symptoms or whatever. But because he took a test just out of curiosity, turns out he had COVID. So it turns out he was dying or whatever. So,
right.
And just like everything else, there's articles, there's news articles now. If you just read your paper, it'll say, not sure whether it's COVID or whether it's seasonal allergies, right? And we're thinking this is a virus so deadly, right?
Yes.
That people are unsure whether or not what they have is hay fever or this deadly, terrible, horrible disease or whatever. But thankfully, Chris Rose's family will survive. I am willing to put money on that they will survive and they will survive well. Because
being from Australia, it'll be something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's so many other things that are trying to kill you in Australia.
Yeah,
so including Jerry, what about these woobies? We got to get to these before.
Okay, so Tom, here we go.
I don't want to run out of time. We've got 10 minutes left for you to do your woobies.
Speed running here. Ready? We're going to do a little bit of the fill in the blank, but I'm going to have a lot less time, you know.
Mhm.
So, Tom, Florida man pleads guilty to blanking Rep. Ilhan Omar.
To well, he's not her brother, so it's not fucking.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to Ilhan Omar to serving her food that is not halal. serving not halal food to Ilhan Omar is my final answer.
That could kind of end in an ing, but it is unfortunately incorrect. Florida man pleads guilty to threatening Representative Ilhan Omar. Now, Tom, for bonus, what did he threaten her with?
Non-halal food.
Tom, believe it or not, he threatened her with a good time.
What?
He threatened her with a good time.
Oh.
Toasty!
All right, there it is.
No, it's not true. He threatened to kill her. Anyway.
Well, I mean, like,
moving on.
She's got 42 virgins or whatever, 72 virgins or however many there are.
That's it. That's however many left. Yeah. So, I don't know if you know this, Tom.
Probably not.
Bill O'Reilly.
I do know.
Did this to a JetBlue worker at JFK. What did he do, Tom?
Serve them non-halal food.
Turns out, Tom, not correct. Close. Toasty! Bill O'Reilly threatened and cursed at a JetBlue worker. And we here at You Had Me at Bigfoot want to send out our deepest condolences
to Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly, as we had no idea he was subjected to being on JetBlue.
Poor bastard. Like, what are the, like...
Poor son of a bitch.
Gosh. What has come of Bill O'Reilly that, like, he's the author of such gems as Killing Jesus, or Killing Lincoln, or Killing Kennedy, or Killing the Rising Star, or the Rising Sun, or
that's right.
Killing Little Bighorn, or I'm sorry, Killing Custer, or Killing who else? Who else did they? Killing Reagan, you know?
Oh yeah, and also Killing Me Softly.
And also, I don't have anything.
All right, Tom. TSA officer has been accused of faking blank to avoid consequences of being blank.
The state of whether or whether or not it was halal. And what was the rest of it?
The TSA officer is accused of
whether or not it was halal.
To avoid consequences of
not gaining access to 72 virgins upon death.
I see. Okay. Well, it's very, again, I understand why you would use that, being at an airport and all that. TSA officer is accused of faking an armed burglary to avoid the consequences of being late to work.
Oh.
Late
That's
to
where
work.
I got thrown off, I think. Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
There's a thing I got to do here.
Toasty! Late to work.
He was late to work.
She.
Are you doing the...
I'll send you the picture.
You're doing the Jay Leno thing. Late to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Have you guys heard about this?
I don't know if you've heard about this.
You ever been walking around and you said, "Oh my goodness, I was going to go over there, but I'm already late for work."
You got to wobble your head. Don't forget to wobble your head. there it is. All right.
Late for work.
The studio audience is just eating it up. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Tom. Here we go. We have 5 minutes left. Okay. Inmate set for execution. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's been convicted of a murder in the 1989 triple slaying of his estranged wife and 2 sons from a previous marriage. In other words, not his kids. He is now, he has selected his last meal.
Is it halal or not?
It is decidedly not. Tom, and anybody in the chat, what has this inmate chosen as his last meal?
You know, Jerry, I want to talk about this because as easy as it would be to say that it's halal or not halal, and that would be my first guess. But I have struck out like 3 times prior to this. I'm reminded of a guy who was on death row, and they asked him what he wanted for his last meal, and he wanted to eat a Bible.
Wow!
And they brought him a Bible, I guess, and I guess he ate it. I don't know.
At least part of it.
Some of it.
Yeah. They said you can't go get executed until you clear your Pontius Pilate.
Terrible, Jerry.
Okay.
That's only part of the Bible. That's like a small portion of it, really. Like the gospel is such a small portion of the Bible. The rest of it is like Hebrew nonsense, right?
So Tom,
I don't know. I would say that it was I would say that it is his last meal. Am I guessing what his last meal is? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There are 3 items.
I haven't read this one. I feel like I'm behind the times. Like I'm not up on my current events. I used to not give a shit about current events, but now like I read all the current events. I don't know what this dude ate, but I would assume that it was I don't know, Jerry. Yeah, I've got nothing. I would say
okay.
I don't want to do the halal joke again, but go ahead. Go ahead, please. I don't know what halal is and what isn't.
A halal lot of nothing. All right. Toasty. Inmate set for execution chooses double cheeseburger, apple pie, and ice cream. He was also quoted as saying, "With quality food like this, you wonder why I chose to get executed."
That's pretty good. Is he like a comedian? Or
he's
just like a regular guy?
He's a funny guy, but like bar funny. You know what I mean?
Like a regular dude who's where I actually read this one time, Jerry. They have like a limit on, and we talked about this on an old episode of You Had Me at Bigfoot, believe it or not, like long before long before V, like long before I even knew who you were, right? There was Dustin and I talked about this, where they have like a limit on how much that this became a law.
Oh, like how much you could order kind of thing?
Yeah, like how much money your meal could cost. Like you couldn't be like, because there was like a dude who ordered like $100 worth of food, and then they brought it, and he didn't eat it. He's like, I'm not hungry. And then he went and got executed or whatever with like all this food or whatever left over. And
do you think someone ate it? Like imagine the guy. So
I'm sure like the guards ate it. Because like I spent some time as a guard, not at a prison, certainly not a prison that had like the death sentence or anything. But like I remember like the cooks in the kitchen. It was so funny because like the cooks would, if you were just cool to the prisoners, like they were cool to you, and like I never had problems ever. I remember even one time.
Could you imagine how insulted the cooks would be? You asked for something from your last meal, and they're like, "Oh, he didn't even order off the menu?
He ordered McDonald's."
Oh, I see. So our food is not as good as McDonald's. I see how it is. I've been talking to you for 10 years, Riley. You said how good my mac and cheese was. You fucking lied.
Couldn't even ask for my mac and cheese.
Didn't even ask for it, you know? You son of a bitch.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mike in Manitoba being the guy who like has watched this show for fucking ever. This episode is like episode number 9. Like the one that we talked. It's called You Had Me at Death Row Part 1, and then we just never did a Part 2 because we ran out of time. This was like back when we were like real tight on time, and we cared about that sort of shit. And
sure,
before we were even live, actually. But
goodness.
And Mike said when asked what my last meal would be, it was bowl of crushed glass for Tom, if I remember, is what Mike says. So Mike he knows those episodes.
Wow.
God bless Mike, because he's been with us since the very beginning. Like, there are two people who have been with us since the very beginning that I can name off the top of my head. He and Superfan, and they are, neck and neck for who is the true You Had Me a Bigfoot Superfan. Then again, the Superfan, the person that we label Superfan, has known me for decades now, almost.
My goodness.
So that hurts Mike in Manitoba in that regard. But no, when I worked at the jail, I would the people, if you're cool to the prisoners, they're like really cool with you. And there were times where I'd go, because you have to go and do head count in every single cell, and every cell had 10 people tops to it. So you would walk in and you'd be like, "Hey, show me your wristband." And if you knew who people were after like the first or second time you've done it, you kind of like know who these people are. So you could just be like, "Hey, hold your wristband up and say who you are," or whatever. When I say your name, say, "Hey, here," and show your wristband or whatever. And you don't have to like go around and like actually look, because you know where they sleep after you've dealt with them a couple times. And so I would sit there and I would stand in the middle of the cell so that I could like look and see that they had their wristband. And I remember there was this dude who was like 7 foot tall. His name was Joe Young, and I called him Mighty Joe Young, like the fucking gorilla from the movie or whatever. But like, some dude came up on me and he was going to hit me from behind. And then Joe Young grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him back. And he said, no, he said, "No, not this one." Like that was the, like once you are cool with certain people, you want to be cool with like the biggest guy in any cell, or any cell block, because they're going to protect you.
Until it's at night.
Right. And then you just don't have to deal with them. You just have to like peek in the cell and make sure that nobody's raping anybody, and then you're good.
Well, no, that's what I mean. If you're the cool guy, if you're the cool cellmate, like if you're cool with the biggest guy, and then it comes nighttime, then
you're getting butt fucked. No, I mean like me as a guard.
Big weedle.
I mean as a guard. It's full of Robitussin and shit. Me as a guard, being cool with like the biggest inmate, that was the goal. Or like the toughest one, and like, in the white supremacy cell, like as long as you were cool with the scrappiest one, the one that was going to be able to like shank somebody if they wanted to, like as long as you kind of know, who's the biggest one, who's the scrappiest one, who's the one who's willing to shank somebody for you. Like as long as you're cool with those people, you're good. But then like they have like the kitchen staff. These are all trustees who you go and wake up at whatever time, and you're like, "Hey man, you guys got to go make breakfast or whatever." As long as you're cool with them, they'll cook you a meal, like, because you're there for mealtime. Right. You go and you serve all the inmates their food and shit, and then they'll say, "Hey, did you want something?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, cook me up a plate of like whatever you got." And then like after a certain point, they're like, "Oh, this dude, I don't eat eggs. Like I never eat eggs." So they're like, "Do you want us to whip you up some chicken strips or whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah." And like after a while, I would joke with them. I'm like, "None of you guys jizzed in the fucking chicken batter, did you?" And they're like, No, we didn't jizz in the fucking chicken batter." So,
and they're like, "Wait, how do you make chicken batter?" Anyway.
Yeah, well, with a little bit of jizz, like just a pinch of a dash of jizz, right?
A dash.
But that was always my joke with them. I'm like, "You guys didn't fucking spit in this, or you guys didn't jizz in this, right?" And they're like, No. But yeah, that was the thing. I like working. I feel like the food at the jail. I've worked in many different places, right? Like a friend that I talk to often, they're like, "Well, you do everything. Like you've worked in all different types of fields, and you've done like a lot of shit." But like when I was a kid, I had lofty dreams, right? Like you look at kids now, and you're like, "What are your dreams? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up?" Like, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut, right? Or I want to be a fucking cop, or I want to be a firefighter or whatever." Like, but when I was a kid, I was like, "I want to be a cop, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a soldier." I like when I watched Forrest Gump, I told my parents, I said, "I want to fight in Vietnam," which I kind of did because I fought in Iraq. So like, I kind of fought in Vietnam. I kind of like fulfilled my dream there. But then I was kind of like, I was a firefighter for a while. I was a prison guard, right? So I was almost a cop, like a little sort of a cop, right? Not really a cop, but like I got to serve in the law enforcement field, right? Okay. Mike says, "I've always wondered what is jerk chicken." So now you know. You got to work in a jail to find out. And then Chris Rose says, a whole brisket. That's the sort of shit that that's the sort of shit that you like look forward to when you're working at a jail. But like I've worked at a lot of different places. I'm a substitute teacher now, right?
Yeah.
And like I'll eat at the schools occasionally. Like when I go and visit my kids, I'll go and I eat at schools. And schools, Michelle Obama fucked that up like big time. Like Michelle Obama fucked up a lot of things, but like one of the things that he really fucked up was school lunches. And I've like I don't know if you've ever eaten with kids in recent years, like in the last decade. If you've ever eaten lunch with them, it's it's like way different. I mean, even when we were kids, when we would eat school lunch or eat lunch at school, it kind of sucked. But like now, you eat it and you're like, I honestly feel like I'm eating like water or like ice cubes and paper. Like there's no flavor to anything. Everything is just disgusting. And listen, I was in the army for years. I served overseas where like we had
disgusting food.
Like I know food that sucks. And like I have eaten lunch with my kids. Just like casually, like I'll go to their school to meet them for lunch just because they asked me, "Hey, would you come eat lunch with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come." And I'll eat lunch there. I'm like, "This fucking sucks. Like, this is the worst food I've ever eaten in my life. Like, there's no nutritious value to it. It's just no flavor to it. There's no nothing to it. Like, Michelle Obama fucked school lunches up." And I can say that. And I mean, I'm obviously not a fan of Michelle Obama. I'm not a fan of Obama as president. I'm not a fan of Democrats. I'm not a fan of any of that stuff. But like, and Trump didn't fix it. No, his beautiful wife never fixed it. But the food still sucks. Like it's awful. But when I worked,
it's almost like they make it exactly like prison.
It's worse than prison because what I'm saying is like I've eaten at a jail, and the jail food is way better. Like, I did not mind eating, and whether it was the spit or the jizz that made it taste better, I don't know. But, like, I'll tell you, the food, when I would eat it at the jail, when they would fix me a tray, and, like, they'd call us on the radio, they'd be like, "Hey, Deputy Miller, your food's ready," and I'd come back and grab my food. And I'd go, like, bring it back, and I'd go and do my walk on the fucking maximum security or whatever. And then I'd come back and I'd eat my food. And then they'd be like, "Deputy so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, your food is ready." So like it made me wonder if like maybe one of us had spit in our food and the other ones didn't or whatever. But those other people were like the kind of people who treated like them like shit. But like I really didn't like the way I saw it when I worked at a jail was like, hey, these are people. Some of them have made some really fucked up decisions. Some of them made really bad decisions. But like, how many of us have made bad decisions that we should have ended up in jail, but we didn't because we got away with it or whatever? You know, like we could just as likely be switched roles right now, you know? So like I treated them with the same amount of respect that I would expect just any human being to be treated with. And, and they seemed to respond favorably. You know, I had a lot of guys
minimally.
Yeah, like just maybe like a little, you know, just a little bit as opposed to the
right,
you know, right into your eggs or whatever. But
right,
yeah, that's. I mean, I'm telling you though, if you want an objective opinion on whose food is better, our prisoners or our children, I can tell you, our prisoners have way better food than our children. And this is somebody who's like speaking objectively from having eaten both. And having worked in that occupation, in both occupations, I can tell you, our prisoners are eating way better than our kids are. And you should raise a big stink about that because your kids are eating some like flavorless, non-nutritious bullshit. And if you haven't already, and I encourage you, if you've got kids who are in the public school system, go and join them for lunch if you can. You may have to get like a background check done, which is cool. Like I'm totally okay with my school asking for me to get a background check done because that ensures that like nobody who doesn't have a background check.
That only super cool people get it.
Yeah, only people who aren't child predators are. And what's funny is I have a super common name, Thomas Miller. There's a Thomas Miller who is a sex offender in my area.
Gosh.
So when anytime they run my driver's license, it raises a red flag. Even though I have a background check on file and everything, it raises a red flag where they have to like ask for additional identification or whatever. And I'm like, nah, I get it. I know there's a Thomas Miller in my area that, or at least in the state, I don't know how close he is, but like there's a Thomas Miller somewhere who is raising red flags for you. And so like I encourage
So
you
when
to
this
go
happens
try
to
your
you,
food and fucking
right?
and make a decision. Go ahead.
So when this happens to you, right? Do you
Mm.
suddenly like, okay, first of all, do you just get this overwhelming feeling, when they ask you for that second ID and it's because there's that other Tom Miller? Do you suddenly hear somewhere out there beneath the
I am curious to wonder, Jerry,
No?
if that Thomas Miller is even still alive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all right, here. I know we're way over on time, and I apologize to anybody who's listening who's got some shit going on.
And I just have one more, and it's jail related. I one more.
Awesome.
Jail
well,
related.
let me do this, and then we'll do the jail related one, which my answer will probably be something about halal or whatever.
Halal. Yeah.
My where the fuck was I going? What were we talking about?
You going to jail, or excuse me, school, eating the food is awful.
Eating food is awful.
The guy had the same. You had to give information, so that way the only child predators were the ones teaching your kids, not anybody visiting their kids.
Oh, my Sunday school. Okay.
Okay.
So, fun fact too, Jerry. I have every Wednesday. I have an hour meeting with my mentor, who's my pastor,
cool.
for this mentored ministry class. Where like I've been taking my questions from the class, and typically they want you to ask stuff that's related to your denomination or whatever. And or any questions that you have about the ministry, but my ministry is not in the church. My ministry is elsewhere, right? Like I'm in the deliverance ministry, which does not have anything to do with the church. It's more so to do with the exorcisms and the occult and that sort of stuff. So, but I go to him because like he was my coach when I started seminary. When you do seminary, you have to find like a coach within the ministry, right? Who is going to be your person that you go to with questions about it. And he was the one I chose years ago when I started, 3 years ago when I started the seminary. It's a 96 semester hour program. So it's like 3 years that you have to spend like in school, like constantly. And so he was my coach back then. But when I transitioned to, and I know you hate hearing about me transitioning, but when I moved to as this new school, right? I chose him to be my mentored ministry coach again. And so I have to go to him and I have to ask him all these questions about mentored ministry. And meanwhile, I also have to fulfill a requirement within the church, right? And perform ministry functions within the church, even though my ministry has nothing to do with the church itself. So I've been doing like opening prayer. I've been added to the roster of like people who are serving within the church. You've got your congregation, and you've got your people that go up and they'll lead opening prayer, they'll lead announcements, they'll lead, worship, the singing, then they'll lead the Lord's Supper, they'll lead these various things. And they need people to fulfill those roles. So I've been doing that as part of this mentored ministry program. And today, when I went and I talked to my pastor for my mentored ministry program, he actually invited me to become a deacon within the church. And yeah,
congratulations.
Thank you. Which was something that I hadn't. I mean, I guess it was on like my list of things to do. Like ask him. It was legitimately on my list of goals. Like find out what steps I need to take to become a deacon and eventually become an elder in the church. And the Church of Christ is kind of weird because it's different from United Methodist or United Reformed Episcopal or
United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, the United Airways. These. It's very different from those because the Church of Christ is very autonomous. So like anyone can start a Church of Christ, and you're not beholden to any hierarchy of church within earthly church, right? So there's like the Church of Christ is the United Church of Christ, which is a different thing, where they all answer to one hierarchy, but we're part of the Church of Christ that is autonomous, which is like your goal as an autonomous Church of Christ is to be the closest thing to the church of the New Testament as you possibly can, but you don't answer to any earthly entity, right? You answer to God alone, to Christ alone. So you have elders within the church who are in charge of the church. And then you have a pastor who is not an elder. It's a separate role, but they are the person who is in charge of evangelizing to the church and representing the church in evangelization and that sort of thing. Then you have deacons who are servants of the elders, which is something I've kind of already been doing with, because I've been a Sunday school teacher for going on a year now. And I've been celebrated as that guy, like, you know, like the elder's wife. She's like, I'm so stoked that you took over this role, because those kids that like I was teaching, that the other elder's wife was teaching, they need a young man to come in and teach them, because I think they would respond better. You know, the young kids who are like, you know, I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade and younger, like they can have a woman teaching them, because that's kind of like still in those nurturing years. But once you get past that, like for me, it was, so the classes that I have taught is typically 7th through 12th, so the teenage kids, and then the younger class that I took, because I alternate with this deacon, he takes over the younger teens or whatever. But then I jumped back and I dealt with some of the middle schoolers or whatever, so 5th through 6th or whatever, or 4th through 6th, whatever, that area. Those were the kids who went and wanted to get baptized recently. And I know I talked about this on the Exodus Americanus. The kids that I was teaching in that class, they wanted to go get baptized. So like the lady, she's one of the elders' wives. She came to me and she said, "Hey, I'm glad you took that class from me, because those kids need a young man to come and shepherd them," or whatever. And those kids, and those were her grandkids, was the funny thing. So she was like so excited. She wrote me this letter. I don't have it down here with me, or maybe I do. I have it. I actually hung it up here. It says, "Tom, thank you for being a part of the service and honoring." Oh no, I'm sorry. That's a different letter. That's a different letter.
Oh.
Okay. Anyways, this other letter that I got, this was for. I'll read this real quick, because this was a friend of mine, Clint, who was from the church. A long time ago. He passed away, and I think I talked about him on the show before, because he looks a little bit like a Danger Zone Kenny Loggins. He looks a little bit like Kenny Loggins from the Danger Zone video.
Nice.
But yeah, he said, "And for honoring Clint, for the family, and for your friends, and for all you do for us." And it was his parents wrote me that card. But anyways, this other woman, she wrote me a letter saying, "You know, they say it takes a village. You know, I want to thank you for shepherding this class, or whatever. But, you know, they say it takes a village, and I want to thank you for being a part of that village." And that was it. And like she and her husband signed it or whatever. But yeah, so like that's huge to me. I'm all for helping the kids. I could probably sit down and I could probably teach an adult class. And I have had, I mean, you know this, Jerry. Like I'll go and I'll talk to people gladly about how to study the Bible if you're curious as an adult. And some other individuals within this who watch this program. I'm happy to talk to you guys about how to kind of like navigate the Bible. But my strength is in like the teen years. I deal with them, and then the younger, like the middle school kids. Like I'm good with helping them kind of develop that sort of understanding and appreciation of the Bible. So, but my teen class this last week, we talked about, we got in some pretty heavy stuff in my teen class this last week. One of which was we were talking about pedophiles. We got onto the topic of pedophiles because I talked about, well, I mean, they're at that age, right? You know, some of them are like 10, 11, 12, like they're coming up on, and some of them are 13 through 17. So I'm like, you guys got to understand, man, like there are some people out there, some real sickos. And we were talking about forgiveness and how to forgive. How we got onto this topic, I don't know. But we were talking about forgiveness and how, you know, you have, how did we get on? We were talking about Christ being tempted no, not Christ being tempted. We were talking about John 3, 1 through 21. and we were talking about Nicodemus and how Jesus was talking to Nicodemus. Nicodemus didn't understand like what he was talking about and that sort of thing. And then and being born again and trying to understand. I think I told you about this. I actually brought you up in this conversation. I was like, I'm excited. Like, I know there are some people who read some of Jesus's parables and some of Jesus' text, and they're like, ooh, what is he talking about? Right? You know, like they have no idea. And I'm like, and I have a friend who's just kind of starting out on the spiritual journey, and a couple of friends, as it were. And I said, they're starting out on this journey, and I'm so
Look, Tom,
excited.
I know I've gotten fat, but you don't have to refer to me as a couple of people.
A couple of people. No, you and one other individual. So literally a couple of people. But I said, they're just starting out on this. I said, I am so excited for them to come to me and say, hey, man, what the fuck is Jesus talking about? Right? Because like and frankly, I mean, that's what it is like sometimes you'll read the Bible and you're like, what is he talking about? And I even did like a little brief homily about this at one point, about that exact passage. I said, I've been studying Christianity, right, for 3 years institutionally, right? And I still don't know what Jesus is talking about sometimes. You know, sometimes he'll say some things and I'm just like, you know, so I'm like, you know, when you have Nicodemus not understanding it. So we got onto that topic. And then somebody said, one of the students said, well, Jesus, you know, God is kind of like a coach, because we break it down by like how, when we look at a passage, we look at what does this passage tell us about God, and what does this passage tell us about man? And like the God portion obviously talks a little bit about Jesus, but the man portion also talks a little bit about Jesus too, right? So we kind of like break it down that way the best we can. And one of them said, well, God kind of like acts like a coach, right? Like he wants us to succeed, but he can't do everything for us, right?
Right.
So you have to do a little bit on your own. And then somebody else jumped in, this other kid. Love this kid. Like he's so smart, but he and I butt heads all the time theologically. But because he's so smart, and I'm always like, well, maybe you might be right. I don't know. Like that's the difference between me as a teacher and like some of the other, like there's a deacon who teaches them and an elder who teaches them. Whereas me, I'm like, you may be right. I don't know. Like it's like your guess is as good as mine on some of these issues. But he's like, well, I think God is more like a lawyer who's defending a guilty client that he knows is guilty. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I totally agree. And so we got onto this topic of like child predators. And there was another individual, a young lady, who said, I could never forgive a child predator. And I said, well, that makes you a shitty Christian. I mean, that's just what it was. Because, and it makes me a shitty Christian. And it makes you a shitty Christian, Jerry. Because how quick are you to forgive a child predator? Take you some time, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
How quick would I forgive a child predator who preyed on one of my children? Jerry, how about you?
Yeah, that's, I mean,
makes you a shitty Christian, right?
Yeah.
So that was the thing that I tried to explain to them recently, or this past week. I was like, we forgive as we would expect God to forgive us, right? So when you're hesitant to forgive a child predator, especially a child, I mean, not even a child predator who wronged you, but a child predator, period. How quick are you to forgive that person? Probably not quick at all. But that makes you a shitty Christian, right? Like, if we want God to forgive us, we need to be quick to forgive the repentant child predator, right? If somebody says,
well, yeah.
There's a difference, right? But even so, if somebody seemed truly repentant and apologized and was like deeply regretful and seemed deeply regretful, maybe they were putting on a show, maybe they weren't. You don't know. You don't know what's in their heart. So you kind of have to roll with it and like say, hey, I forgive you. But do you? You know, and it kind of like led to that discussion. And it was so funny because I talked to the kids afterwards. I talked to their parents afterwards, because after service, I said, hey, so here's the poop. Here's what we talked about during Sunday school. I don't want young so-and-so and young so-and-so because I have a family. This is the kid that I think is really smart. His sister is equally as smart. They're very good kids. Like when they talk to me, I'm like, damn, you guys should be teaching this class, right? Because they're homeschooled too, is the thing. And like all the other kids are public schools. And so like these two that I identify when I see them, I'm like, these two are homeschooled and they're fucking way smarter than these other kids. Like, it should say something, right? But
yeah.
I went up to the parents afterwards and I said, hey man, here's what we talked about today. I don't want them to go home. And I know, because I know your kids, I know that they go home and they talk to you about what happened in Sunday school. So I want to get out in front of that. I said, let me be clear that like I said, here's what we talked about. We talked about unrepentant pedophiles and child predators and stuff. And I said, I don't want them to go home and have the impression that I was defending child predators. Because I made it very clear during the class. I said, no. I said, I am with you. The girl who said that she would have a hard time forgiving child predators. I said, I'm with you 100%. I said, I don't know. This is something that I struggle with. I said, but you need to know about this as somebody who will be potentially victimized by this, but also somebody who one day will have children who could be victimized by this. You need to know that we have to, if we want to truly exemplify Christ's image and Christ's presentation and Christ, if we were truly to emulate Christ, we need to like reevaluate that sort of thing. So anyway, I don't know how he got on that topic, but like when I was a prison guard or a jail guard, I was like, these are just guys who made bad decisions. And like, though they didn't affect me, somebody that I know and loved and whose family I love was in jail at that time, right? I didn't know him at the time, but come to find out, his parents and I are now very good friends. Like the way you treat people is kind of like indicative, and the way like this whole deacon thing when it was extended to me today, like I'm like with this mentored ministry stuff and all that, I'm like, well, the way we present ourselves to the community is, is kind of like, is very important to the church's image. And likewise, when I was a jailer or a deputy jailer, the way I treated these people was kind of like, am I treating them humanely? Am I treating them as a human being? Am I treating them as like another man? Or am I treating them as like this little bitty, just like, hey, you're a prisoner, I can treat you like shit, which is kind of like the way that some of these deputy jailers and some of these correctional officers like treated them or whatever, which is kind of fucked up. So anyways, Stephicus, I'm sorry. Let me go through the chat here and make sure that we've got everything, because Jerry did step out. Don't tell him I told you, but he did have to step away. He's got a little baby. The Mostly Wave says, just going to send my kid to prison. The fitness is way better too. King of Jordan says, when I worked at a cookie factory, my lunch would often consist of a handful of raw cookie dough, which is like it's breakfast of champions. Mostly Wave also said, I'm going to start the Decepticon Church of Christ, which I encourage you to do. I personally, here's the thing about the Church of Christ. I'll bounce back to this. Stephicus says, we are planning to homeschool and also do Bible study with our baby when she's a little older. I think Bible study is critical. This is one of my goals as part of my rule of life plan, is I need to start doing devotionals with my sons again. I taught them how to pray. I taught them kind of the standard structure of prayer, but I need to get back to doing devotionals with them. That's part of my goal of my rule of life plan. And it's something, as I was preparing my ministry journal this week, I realized that I was slacking in it. I need to do that. And truth be told, I look at it and I'm like, man, I've got all these people in the church who rely on me, which is, I think, why I was invited to be into the deaconship, that situation. And this is not like a, hey, you're a deacon or whatever. This is not that. This is my pastor said, hey, if you're interested, I think you'd be great at it. You've got, your wife is a baptized believer. Your kids are great in church. Your kids are involved, habitually getting the attendance award. And you're here all the time. You're volunteering for this and that and the other. He said, I think you'd be a great deacon. Let me talk. He said, do you want to talk to the elders or do you want me to talk to the elders about it? So it's not It's not set in stone. It may come back saying, "Hey, Tom, we're not interested in, you need to do this and that and the other before we can consider you for deaconship." However, but it was extended to me. And Stephagus said, "You're doing great, Tom." So thank you. Thank you, Stephagus. But yeah, I encourage that with your children, especially young babies. I know, Jerry, you're in the same boat. Get one of those like adventure Bibles where you just like, instead of like reading a story at night, because I used to read to my kids, like Batman comics or whatever, or Deadpool comics. Like I used to read, that's what I would read to them at night, and they loved it, and it was great. And I would do the voices for all the Batman characters, and they loved it. But now like if you've got kids who are interested in hearing stories at night, and they're like cognizant enough to like understand what's going on, read them the little adventure Bibles. My middle son, he was the first one to ask me if he could be baptized. And he was the one that, like, instead of being like, "Hey, here, read this Bible, this new international version or this new American Standard Bible," instead we were like, I know you like graphic novels. Here's a graphic novel version of the Bible. Like somebody did a graphic novel version of the Bible. We gave that to him instead. And to the point where like every night before they go to bed, I do Aaron's blessing, right? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. I do that to them every night, all three of them, to the point where they come and find me at night if they're about to go to bed and I'm not like readily like tucking them in or whatever. They'll come and they'll say, "Hey, can I give a blessing?" And I'll give them the blessing. And my excuse for that was I told them, I said, "God has blessed me far more than I deserve." The least I can do is pass that on to you. So I will gladly give you the blessing no matter what I'm doing. I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll give you the blessing, pass it on to you. And so Dayton, he brought me his Bible, his graphic novel Bible the one day, and he said, "Hey, look at this." And he showed me Aaron's blessing from Exodus, and it shows Aaron saying, "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you." I said, "Oh, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's the significance of that, right?" But if you're reading to your children like Bible stories at night or whatever, that's great because they're going to hear that and they remember that, right? My kids remember a time where I would tuck them in and I would do the Joker voice, right? So like the sort of stuff that you do to them in their sponge years is like critical for what they do when they grow up, and they, go on their separate ways. And they might end up being like my middle son, the black sheep who says, "Hey, can I get baptized?" Right? First out of everybody in the family, my oldest, who has been like, he's the leader, very like, the more you watch your kids grow up, the more you realize there's something to this birth order philosophy, right? My dad told me this years ago, and I ignored him because I was like, I got other things going on. But like now that I have my own kids, I'm like, damn, this birth order stuff is like legit. Like they know what they're talking about. My oldest son, he's like a leader. My middle son, he's the black sheep, and my youngest son, he's the baby, right? And that's just how it is. And so I encourage you. I encourage you, if you're not already involved in a church with youth groups and stuff, get there. If you're not already like involved in leading or helping in the church, you don't necessarily need to lead. I helped for years in my church. I told them, I was like, you don't want me. Like even when I felt my ministry calling, I told God, "You don't want me. Like I'm the last guy that you want for this," right? And then my pastor, after years of me being like, "Hey man, if you need help, I'll help. If you need me to teach Sunday school, I'll help. If you need me to help with this creation of this program or whatever, I'm here to help." But like eventually, today he said, "Hey, if you want to be a deacon, man, we need deacons." And there's like 3 positions in the church, right? There's the pastor, there's the elders, and there's the deacons. And so he asked me to be a part of that. Through no interest of my own, it's not, I've been interested in it, but I've never brought it up to him like, "Hey man, how do I become a deacon? How do I become he just brought it up to me today. So the more you're involved, and I've never been involved with like the interest of like, I need to be a part of the church leadership. I was more interested in like, hey, I'm here for my kids. I'm here for my wife. I'm here for the congregation. I'm here to help in any way that I can, but I'm not that guy. And he said, "Hey, you are that guy. Come, let me talk to the elders. I want you to become a deacon because we need deacons." So that's what I encourage you all to do. I don't know what your particular denomination is. whether you're Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, or Roman Catholic. I know Roman Catholic is a little more difficult to get like in the leadership roles within the church, and same thing with Eastern Orthodox, I assume. But some of you Protestant guys, like I'm a Protestant guy, I would say if you're not already involved in your church, what are you waiting for, right? Like get out there and we're hypercritical of the church. I know I'm one of them. That's the whole reason. Like I talk about this anytime I talk about the chaplaincy. I'm like I was hypercritical of the chaplaincy in the army, and now here I am, like competing for a chaplain residency at the VA. Which, by the way, I turned in my packet last week, so I'm officially on the list of potential candidates for chaplain residency. Also on a candidacy for the deaconship at my church. So if I can do it, man, like you guys need to get involved because, we're critical of the church, but how can you change the church if you're not within it? I would say get involved, right? So anyways, Jerry, what do you got? I know you came back with some stuff you were ready to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just had two things. One was the last whoopsies, and then, of course, you had mentioned before how we all feel about forgiveness, and while I was listening to that, I, certainly wanted to have my own piece said about forgiveness, and, there was, the more I know, the less I understand. All the things I thought I figured out, I have to learn again. You know what I mean? I've been trying to get down to the heart of the matter. But everything changes, and my friends seem to scatter. But I think it's about forgiveness. Forgiveness. Even if you don't love me anymore. That is the most ill-timed Don Henley joke reference I have ever made in my life, and you all are here to get it. So that's
what good does holding on to a grudge do? You may lose somebody, but what good does holding a grudge do for you,
Jerry? It doesn't do much good, No, in all seriousness, I'm sorry. I was just trying to make a joke after all that time because I wanted to say it.
It was a good point though, because like we just mentioned or whatever, what good does holding a grudge do? I mean, like there's a reason why like my hairline is so strong at 36, right? Because I don't hold grudges. That's just the thing. Like, but it was not necessarily because I'm like, oh, I'm way more godly than you are. I'm not holier than thou. It was just because I'm like, well, why am I gonna like focus on this person when they don't care, whatever? Like, no, so I'm just like,
I'll tell you,
who gives a shit or whatever. But now I'm just like quick to forgive. So it's like I went from one extreme to the other, where I'm like, well, I don't give a shit about this person if they don't give a shit about me. Hairline remains. Now I'm just like, well, I'm quick to forgive because God forgives me, because I'm a shitbag, right? Like if God forgives me, I should forgive likewise, right? So like, again, my hairline remains. I'm 36 years old and I've got this fucking baller hairline, and to which I attribute God's grace to, right? But yeah, so like, that's the thing. Like, why would you hold on to some of that stuff? I don't know.
Well, also it actually, I believe whether you want to talk about spirituality or scientific studies, literally it makes you sick and ill to hold on to that stuff. And, the philosophy that it takes just as much effort and space inside of you to hate as much as love. Why do one versus the other, I guess, and like you said, also the wasting of time and effort and space in your heart for that. So that's a whole other thing too.
Stephakus's hot mom's lovely daughter mentioned just now, I've always said holding a grudge is wasted energy. And it's true because you could be angry with somebody. And I think it takes more energy. Like that old saying goes where like it takes way more muscles to frown than it does to smile, right? Like,
Yes.
it's the same as true of like being angry at somebody. Like, why would I even like focus that energy on that person? Like, who gives a shit? And you know, I'll tell you what, I have this started even before, and I think this is probably why the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? You know, like even before today's conversation about like, hey, if you want to be a deacon, like I'd love to talk to our, you know, the elders or whatever, and we'll make that happen or whatever. I had never mentioned it before, like it never come up, but like recently, I've been like, man, I, especially after I got my Twitter back, right? Like I want to like say some hurtful shit, but like then I realized I'm like, what good does that do, right? Like, okay, so I'll be vulnerable here for a moment. My brother and I have kind of like a weird relationship, right? He made some mistakes, but I've made some mistakes in life. But he's made some mistakes that are far louder than the mistakes that I've made. And I've realized I'm like, why would I be critical of him? Like for something that he did that he can't control, now he's dealing with the repercussions of that. He's already dealing with the repercussions of that. Like, why would I add to that? Why would I be like, well, that's what you get? You know, like what good does that do? Why don't I be supportive in any way that I can? Where I'm like, well, that may be true, but let's see what we can do outside of that. Let's see if we can try to help make that better, right? And so I've started this new policy of like where he brings me something and I'm instead of being like, well, that's stupid, right? You know, like I'm like, if he's bringing me something that doesn't hurt anybody else, I'm like, okay, yeah. Let's see what we can do with that. But if he brings me something that's harmful to somebody else, yeah, of course I'm going to be like, well, I don't know if that's the right idea. I don't know if that's the direction we want to go. But if he brings me something that's instead of being like, well, you're this and that or whatever, I'm not going to repeat what's wrong with my brother or whatever, like the mistakes that he's made, because he's paid for those mistakes. Rather than doing that, I'm just going to say, well, why don't we focus on this instead, right? You know, so it's so easy to look at somebody's mistakes and be like, well, no, because of this and that and the other. But instead being like, well, why don't we focus here instead of that area, which we know that you can't achieve. Like, you're not going to go and become the president of the United States. Why don't we focus on this area where, like, maybe you're, you know, successful and you could in this particular field, right? So I'm where it matters. So, and for instance, I said, I'll tell you, I'll be vulnerable. Like I said, there was a comment about how Jen Psaki, right, the communications representative for Joe Biden, right, or the press secretary for Joe Biden, she said she started crying for one reason or another. I don't know what it was, whether it was show or not. But anyways, I saw the post on on Discord, right, which is where like the only social media that I really give a shit about. But there was a post on there saying Jen Psaki cries because of blah 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 blah, and I commented saying Jen Psaki can eat my ass. Right? Like quote. You can quote me. Tom Miller said Jen Psaki can can eat my ass. Right? And I said it. And as soon as I said it, before it could like be removed because people had commented, I said, you know what? That's not the person that I need to be. I deleted it. Right? So I was like, okay, all right, stop it. You know, and it's a difficult process, and there are some things that I'm still struggling with, right? There are some things that I need to fix in my own life before I even entertain the possibility of deaconship, right, within my church. There are some things that I need to fix. But that was like one of the big ones, right? Because I have a mouth on me. You guys know this. Like you, Jerry, you know this. You guys who have been watching the show. Mike, who's been watching the show for, gosh, half a decade, 7 years. Or no, 2017. So 5 years. Yeah, half a decade. Yeah, you know, for those of you who have been watching for as long as you have, and those of you newcomers who have watched it and been like, oh man, Tommy, you've got a fucking mouth on you. You know, like I'm trying to be gooder, and I hope that you are also trying to be gooder, right? And that's part of our spiritual journey, and I'm so excited that you guys are experiencing that with me, rather than me being like the Joel Osteen, Billy Graham fucking, those guys who are like, oh, I'm just a spiritual giant. You have to strive to be me. I am the most imperfect person that you will ever meet. And I'm not proud to admit that, but I am willing to admit that, right? And Superfan knows this. Superfan and I have like extended conversations where like he knows that I'm like the furthest thing from perfect that can be, but he knows that I'm trying. And Jerry, I know that you know that I'm trying, but we're human, right? And I have not had that experience, that Saul of Tarsus. Like I've not had that experience where Jesus like pinned me down on the road and he's like, "You motherfucker, you like, why? How dare you? You need to change your ways, right?" I'm a human, and I suck, and I'm awful, and I am sinful, and I am working on it. I really am. And the fact that I was able to notice, and I hope that you guys see the victories that I see when like Jen Psaki, whatever, when she starts crying about some shit, and you want to pop onto Discord and be like, Jen Psaki could suck my dick or whatever, or can eat my ass, which was the exact quote. Jen Psaki could eat my ass. And then you go, that's not who I'm trying to be. I need to delete that. And you go and you delete it, right? I want you guys to like know that about me. Like, I know I present this, hey, we need to be more biblical. We need to be practice our spiritual disciplines. But guess what? I'm just as fallible as like the worst of us because I suck. And I tell my wife this all the time too. Like when she says hey, you forgot to do such and such. I'm like, I do the, it's on it's not on Waterboy, but it's on one of the movies where like Rob Schneider goes, "You suck again." I always say, "I suck again." I failed at being who God wants me to be. And I encourage you guys to also recognize, hey man, I'm trying, but there are days, every day we fall short of the glory of God. So every day it's okay to go, I suck again. I tried, but I failed. It's okay. It happens. But the goal is that we recognize, we stop, we realign ourselves, we get back on the track. And that's, I think, don't, when you appear before St. Peter, don't be like, well, Tom Miller said, but I think, honestly, the best we can do is try. We're fallible, right? We are human. We are, we're born with Adam's sin. We have all that stuff. We have to deal with that. The best we can do is try. And as humans, as far along as we are to 2000 at least, 5 to however many thousand years, depending on your particular belief, we're so far down the line that like our sin is so great. The best you can do is just try, pray, hope, and make the honest effort. And that's the best I can tell you. And me as a guy who's like in the ministry, I hope that you can, I don't know if this is true, but like I go to bed kind of comfortably knowing that you guys can kind of relate to me as like an intermediary. Like I'm the guy who's in the ministry, but I'm also like a foul human being. Like I use foul language. I talk about gross things. I'm like the most sinful among us, but I'm also in the ministry. I hope that you guys can appreciate that and realize that like as long as you're genuinely trying to make that leap, I think that's it. I don't know. Jerry, does that make sense to you? Or am I kind of like speaking am I being confusing?
No, I understand what you're saying. Essentially, it's a way of saying, to me anyway, if your heart is in the right place and you are making efforts to be the best person you can be, then that should always be something that you're striving for, but also, use to counterbalance any negative feelings about how you may act or how you may fail or things like that. And eventually, the assumption, at least, is that it will catch up. In other words, if you didn't keep that in the back of your head, if you didn't keep trying to do that, then you, Tom Miller, would have kept the comment up of Jen Psaki can eat my ass. And that would have stayed there and we all would have had a laugh or whatever it was. Instead, it was not only that you took it down, but you also had like sort of these internal revelations on why you had to take it down, who you want to be, and what, like all the sort of things came flashing off of just a one small moment, and then that's going to lead probably to a moment in time where you're not even going to have the urge or even the thought to do it because you've become a different person from that. And so that I think that's what it is, right? Be the best person that God made you to be, and keep trying to do that every single day, and show a level of forgiveness to your own failings as you would therefore have to try to give to someone else, and both of which are difficult. So yeah, that's what I think.
What's what Mike in Manitoba says, oh, there's some stuff in the chat that we got to address, I guess, before we do your last whoopee. Steph says exactly this. I'm sorry. Steph's hot mom's lovely daughter says this. Exactly this. One of our church secretaries came to me to let me know that they need help. This topic reminds me that I should totally hurry up and call them. You should. You should. Steph's hot mom's lovely daughter. You should. You should absolutely do this, because here's the thing about, and I know you guys are Catholic. We're of a different denomination, a different sect of the Christian church. But I know that, like, I mean, it's kind of jacked up. Like the churches, people like to pick on the churches about being like tax free and like all this money flowing into it. But I know in my church, I can't speak to other churches. I know that the Catholic Church, you're more mainstream than most of us are. It's more like the Christian church versus the Protestant Christian church, where we kind of like removed ourselves from the Catholic Church. Not necessarily because there was an issue with the Catholic Church, but because there was an issue with the Church of England. I don't want to get into a historical discussion about it, but I would say that there is, there are some differences between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. And I myself have always been a Protestant. I've attended my grandmother's church, she's a Catholic, and like I get it. And I have friends who are Catholic seminarians or who were Catholic seminarians. And like I totally get it. I think that the Catholic Church, I used to joke that Catholicism is what you do if you want to guarantee entry into heaven because of ritualistic behavior. Like that's like if you're legitimately Catholic because of your concern with like, well, I know if I do such and such a ritual, I will gain entry into heaven. But it's kind of like the university education where like you go to the school and X days throughout the week you physically appear on campus and they teach you, and then you go and do whatever. Whereas Protestantism is the online college where you're kind of expected to have your own amount of discipline in order to gain entry into the kingdom of heaven, right? It's kind of like that whole situation where Catholicism keeps you on a straight and narrow path, whereas Protestantism is they're like, well, if you want to gain entry into heaven, we're here to help you. However, you're going to kind of have to do a lot of the work on your own. So yeah, I would say go for it. Like, there's no money in the ministry. Anybody who goes and tries to get their Masters of Divinity on their own dollar, or trying to like take out student loans, that's a stupid fucking decision. It really is, because like fiscally, it's stupid. Because you will never make that money back. You will be one of those people who's complaining about how you don't have money because student loan debt. But fortunately for me, I have the GI Bill, and I was able to use that for my Master's of Divinity. And I actually have my Wisconsin GI Bill, which I'm considering going into my Doctor of Divinity, but we'll see how that plays out. So I could be the Reverend Dr. Thomas Miller one day. But then Stephicus says, I've always said holding a grudge is wasted energy. That's true. I think you're wasting time. If you're like angry at somebody, like I don't ever think about it. I try not to think about it. I try like if I'm angry at somebody, I'm usually like, well, they have their reasons or whatever. I move on. Forgiveness, and then Micah Manitoba says forgiveness removes guilt's power over both parties, which is true. And I think that's the issue that I have with Catholicism is like if you are going and you feel like your sin is removed because you go to a preacher and say, Father, forgive me for I have sinned, and that's it, and you're done. That's not true repentance. Repentance is you have to, because you could go and say, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. I fucked some woman who's not my wife. Say however many Hail Marys and Our Fathers, and you're good to go. And then you go and you fuck some other chick who's not your wife. Then you come back the next week and you say, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. It's been 1 week since my last confession. I fucked some other chick who is not my wife. Okay, well, say however many Our Fathers and Hail Marys. That's not true repentance. True repentance is leaving that lifestyle of adultery, right? So that's my issue with repentance in the Catholic Church. It's great if like you think repentance is just being able to go to a priest and saying, hey, forgive me for I have sinned. Whereas like for Protestantism, our idea of repentance of sin is like, wow, I am a sinner and I need to leave that desire of sin behind, right? And you do, because if you don't, then you're just as bad as the next sinner who is not saved, right? So, and then Mike in Manitoba says, Tom the Hood's preacher. So I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you. Go ahead, Jerry. Did you want to do your last whoobies or?
I think we could save it for next week.
We'll save it.
It's the subject
it's not
matter.
Sensitive.
Well, it's not time sensitive, and it's also the subject. Like it just would veer, just such a different way. I think it's better off for next week.
I mean, it's only 11:57, Jerry. If you want to take it.
No.
Okay.
I think it's my vote is next week.
Okay, we'll save it, write it down, and we'll deal with it next week. Jerry,
Done.
what do you have to shill for this week? As Yakov would say, and Yakov's team would say, what do you have to shill for this week?
You know how it is. Just shilling my old Telegram. If you want to check out the more serious, the more serial of the whoopsies, join our group, Telegram group, and you could also follow me over at No Thanks over on Telegram.
Yeah, if you're not already involved on the Discord, I can't encourage you enough. Those of you who are new to the chat, we typically what's funny is we average around 10 people average for viewers for the show. If you're not already involved in the Discord, you can find us here. The link is right here on https://discord.gg/5 capital C, lowercase J, capital J, capital S, 5, lowercase U. If you join us, if you're watching the video or whatever, that's real easy for you. You can see it on the left-hand side of the screen. But if you are listening to the podcast, that's what it is. It's discord.gg/5CJJS5Q. We'd love to have you on the Discord. We do a lot of chatting throughout the week. I am very active in the chat. Jerry, not so much. I think it's because Jerry probably hates you. But the... no, it's because Jerry's over on the Telegram sharing the whoobies. And I like to get on the Telegram as well. If you look me up on, you had me at Bigfoot on Telegram, and Jerry, I think he mentioned it as well. What was yours, Jerry? Repeat it.
No Thanks. NAH, no thanks.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, NAHNOTHANKS on Telegram. That's where Jerry does his weekly whoopies. These are the actual weekly whoopsies. Like he shares all the NWO stuff. He shares all the the vaccine stuff, which is where I came to appreciate Jerry. Back when Jerry and I were just young friends, not BFFs, but back in that time, he would often post his whoopsies on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm sorry, And then I would comment on them saying, with a link to some other nonsense about the vaccine or COVID, saying, "Is this a whoopsies, Jerry?" Back then.
And I would always give him the seal of approval.
That I would always go to Jerry about the whoopsies. This is like 2 years, 3 years almost running.
I know.
Jerry and I have been friends sharing whoopsies back since he started on Jerry. The thing about Jerry that you guys don't know is that the time that Jerry came on the show, the first time Jerry came on the show was actually like one of the strikes that we got on YouTube because we cyberbullied John Podesta so hard. we got a strike on YouTube. So if you haven't already, I encourage you, because it's one of my favorite, and this is the reason why I reached out to Jerry when not a lot of people know this. I don't know how many people know this, but when V decided to step away from the microphone and step behind the camera or whatever, when he decided to leave the show and I was left on my own, there were two people that I thought of that were possibles. And the first person that I thought of was Jerry. The other person, I don't know if I've ever relayed this information, but it was Stoneclaw. We did an episode where it was you had me at the Galactic Empire or whatever, whenever it came out that there was like a United Galactic government or whatever. He came on and he was the Galactic Federation, right? He came on and it was so funny. But like Jerry was my first choice because I knew that he was funny. We had worked with him a couple times, and I thought, I'm like, this is a funny dude. I would love to have him back and be like a permanent fixture on the show. And so that's how Jerry became part of the show. But his first one was You Had Me at Skippy, which has been taken down. It's on YouTube. You can only find it on the Discord. But then also, You Had Me at Vax, Jab, and Fauci is the other one that you could find Jerry on. But because of those episodes, I'm like, this is a funny dude that I think we need to have like as a permanent fixture on the show. And he so graciously joined us permanently. So that is the story of how Jerry became a permanent fixture on this episode. Mike in Manitoba says later have a good one. Jake Hoob, who is now on the East Coast right now. Have a good one, guys. Mostly wave. Take care, folks. And then Jerry with his mysterious no-name account by all. So thank you guys all. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, all that bullcrap, comment. Once we're formally closed out, buy a shirt, do all that cool shit. If you're interested, on Redbubble, all that stuff is available. Hop on the Discord, hop on the Telegram. We'd love to have you. And we will see you guys all next week.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.